The Book of Jubilees holds within it some of history's most elaborate and chilling prophecies. These are predictions that experts say are starting to manifest in real time, right in front of us. Right now, we're exploring the full narrative of Jubilees' ultimate predictions. We'll examine everything from the celestial warnings that will announce the final days to what ultimately awaits all of humanity. Over the coming hours, we're going to examine each and every prophecy found within this enigmatic text, starting with the earliest warning signals and moving all the way through to the concluding judgment. You're about to learn why scholars of Scripture have labeled these the most comprehensive apocalyptic prophecies ever documented, and why certain people are convinced we're witnessing their fulfillment in today's world. Now, before we begin, if this is your first time here on this channel, think about tapping that like button and hitting subscribe if you haven't done so yet. And please, share with us your location and the current time where you are. We really enjoy hearing from you. So, with that said, let's dive right in, shall we? The manuscript that attempted to predict all of time. Envision an age-old scroll concealed for many centuries under desert sands. Within its pages lies something truly remarkable, a comprehensive blueprint of time in its entirety. Every instant that has occurred, every single breath that will be drawn, every ascent and descent of civilizations, all documented before the world even existed. This is the audacious assertion made by the Book of Jubilees. Beyond being simply a religious manuscript, it represents humanity's boldest effort to unravel the mystery of existence itself. During times when individuals felt adrift in the disorder of their reality, this text offered solutions. When mighty empires oppressed, the defenseless and evil appeared to flourish, Jubilees quietly assured them, "Be patient, a divine plan exists." On the surface, it might appear to be just another age-old prophecy, yet underneath lies something considerably more captivating, a glimpse into the minds of those who refused to believe history was mere chance. These individuals needed time to have meaning. They required the future to deliver justice. They needed God to maintain flawless accounting. Those who authored Jubilees didn't just forecast the world's conclusion. They reconstructed the very nature of time, fragmenting it into organized, digestible units. Well, they built a celestial calendar in which every transgression had its appointed moment, every kingdom its predetermined end date. More than simple prophecy, they constructed a theology centered on hope, masked as unavoidable destiny. This text never became part of the Bible. As most are aware, religious councils turned it away. Jewish scholars put it to the side. Still, for more than 2,000 years, it has shared its mysteries with those who discovered it. Christians in Ethiopia have safeguarded it as holy scripture. Monks dwelling in deserts transcribed it by flickering candlelight. Contemporary researchers have excavated its pieces from caves of antiquity, still attempting to comprehend why it held such importance for people confronting their world's end. The narrative of Jubilees starts with a fundamental human requirement, the requirement to trust that pain carries purpose. When hostile forces march down your streets, when your house of worship crumbles to ruins, when all things sacred appear under siege, you face two choices: surrender to hopelessness or discover a method to incorporate it all into a greater narrative. Jubilees selected the greater narrative. It gathered the well-known accounts from Genesis and Exodus and transformed them into a manual for deciphering history's concealed designs. Every patriarch transformed into a seer. Every historical occurrence transformed into a glimpse of future events. The past transformed into a looking glass, reflecting what was yet to come. This book came into being during one of Jewish history's most chaotic eras. Greek civilization swept across the ancient world, confronting established ways of thought. Monarchs insisted on devotion to foreign deities. Younger generations turned away from the traditions of their forebears. Leaders of tradition made compromises with those in power. For many, this felt like the collapse of everything. But Jubilees perceived deeper patterns beneath the chaos on the surface. Where some observed senseless brutality, it identified sacred mathematics. Where some grieved over shattered customs, it envisioned universal renewal. The text guaranteed that time itself favored those seeking justice. Every injury would find healing. Every injustice would be made right. Every tear would be dried. And yet, this wasn't about passive reassurance. Jubilees made demands of those who read it. It asked them to view their current circumstances as elements of a timeless design. Their hardships weren't something new. They represented the most recent installment in a saga that started before the act of creation. Their decisions held significance not solely for their own sake, but for the fulfillment of time's magnificent trajectory. Those who wrote the book grasped something deep about the human mind. People require narratives that clarify their suffering. They require structures that convert disorder into significance. They require confidence that their anguish fulfills an objective beyond their personal circumstances. Jubilees delivered all three of these. Beyond mere forecasting, it provided involvement. Those who read weren't helpless casualties awaiting deliverance. They were participants in a story whose conclusion had already been composed in their benefit. This understanding altered everything. It converted despair into forbearance, fury into determination, bewilderment into calm assurance. The scroll holding these guarantees has journeyed across the centuries, concealed in caverns, transported secretly over boundaries, rendered into languages now forgotten. Every generation encountering it confronted identical questions. Can time genuinely be charted? Can what lies ahead truly be discovered? Can suffering genuinely contribute to a higher purpose? This evening, we trace that ancient scroll's lengthy voyage, from catastrophe to consolation, from prediction to expectation. We investigate how people in desperation fashioned a book attempting to forecast all of time and the reason their vision continues to haunt us even now. What exactly is the Book of Jubilees? Picture Moses ascending Mount Sinai, not one time but 2 times. On his first ascent, he obtains the stone tablets, but during his second climb, the climb that Scripture fails to document, he obtains something far more exceptional. A celestial being sits at his side and starts to speak words for him to record. Across 40 days and 40 nights, this heavenly courier discloses the entire chronicle of time, stretching from the world's initial moment to its closing breath. This is the way Jubilees presents itself to readers. The text asserts it contains that secret disclosure, the concealed wisdom, transmitted from angel to prophet to human souls prepared to accept it. More than imaginative storytelling, this presentation fulfilled a particular function. Within the ancient world, fresh concepts required established legitimacy. Daring assertions demanded credentials rooted in antiquity. Jubilees gathers the recognizable narratives from Genesis and Exodus and transforms them into something never before seen. Where the Torah offers family lineages, Jubilees supplies precise dates. Where holy writings reference occurrences, Jubilees clarifies their universal importance. Where the Bible presents history, Jubilees discloses fate. This book separates the entirety of time into orderly segments termed Jubilees, intervals of 49 years apiece. Inside every Jubilee exist 7 weeks, lasting 7 years each. This mathematical exactness wasn't mere ornamentation, it embodied theology. Those who authored it held the conviction that time itself obeyed sacred designs, that history developed in accordance with celestial mathematics. Initially, it might resemble an ancient timekeeping system, yet Jubilees carries the significance of something much more profound. Each event with a date transforms into a fragment within an enormous riddle. Adam's formation, Noah's great flood, Abraham's sacred agreement, Israel's departure from Egypt, all connect together to expose time's invisible framework. The structure of the book mirrors the message it conveys. Just as time progresses in systematic cycles, the story advances through deliberately arranged phases. Creation gives way to moral decay. Moral decay activates divine judgment. Judgment creates room for rebirth. Rebirth prepares the ground for the subsequent cycle. This design repeats itself across history. with each repetition drawing the world nearer to its ultimate metamorphosis. Beyond mere retelling of events, Jubilees operates as a guidebook for interpreting divine providence. It instructs those who read to perceive their personal experiences as elements of timeless designs. Their pain mirrors Noah's era. Their oppression resembles Abraham's ordeals. Their expectation echoes Moses' dream of the land of promise. This book arose from groups that felt out of place in time. Foreign authorities dominated their territory. Unfamiliar practices penetrated their civilization. Young individuals deserted traditional methods. Conventional sources of power appeared defenseless against transformation. In answer, Jubilees presented a distinct form of power, the power of heaven's personal archives. This celestial power reveals itself through continual mentions of tablets in heaven. The angel informs Moses that all being disclosed had already been inscribed in the tablets of heaven. History's past, present, and future coexist at once within heaven's collection. Human events merely play out what had already been documented before time's beginning. These assertions fulfilled several functions. They raised the book standing beyond mere human thinking. They offered reassurance to individuals who felt abandoned by God. They indicated that present anguish was fleeting, while sacred justice remained everlasting. Above all, they converted readers from inactive casualties into knowledgeable players in universal drama. The language of the book mirrors its universal aspirations. Ordinary occurrences become saturated with significance. Calendar dates become destiny itself. Family trees become prophetic visions. Even details that seem insignificant, what a person consumed, the person they wed, the place they journeyed to, possess theological importance. Nothing occurs through accident. All things advance the broader design. Jubilees additionally operates as a connection between varying categories of ancient writing. It merges the storytelling approach of Genesis with the legal exactness of Leviticus. It fuses historical records with visionary prophecies. It combines priestly focus on ceremonial purity with apocalyptic visions of change. This blended character mirrors the intricate requirements of groups positioned between customary and transformative methods of thought. Those who wrote the book recognized that people require both consistency and transformation. They offered consistency by retelling recognizable accounts. They offered transformation by uncovering concealed meanings inside those accounts. Those reading could feel linked to their forebears, while simultaneously feeling summoned to fresh methods of comprehending their reality. Beyond being a historical account, Jubilees functions as theological reasoning. It maintains that time carries intention, that pain has boundaries, that justice operates on a timetable. These weren't detached philosophical assertions. They served as functional instruments for spiritual endurance during an age when customary structures appeared insufficient. The influence of this book reaches well past its initial setting. Early followers of Christ referenced it. Scholars in medieval times examined it. Modern explorers of antiquity discover its pieces. Ethiopian congregations continue reading it as holy text. Every generation discovers something distinct within its content, yet the fundamental attraction stays unchanged, the guarantee that disorder is genuinely order wearing a disguise. A catastrophe of time, the world that brought Jubilees into existence. Envision Jerusalem during the 2nd century prior to Christ. Greek military personnel monitor the temple grounds. Youthful priests communicate more in Greek than Hebrew. Customary celebrations vie with athletic competitions, paying tribute to foreign gods. Aging scholars observe their lifetime's labor disintegrate as their personal offspring welcome foreign traditions. This wasn't simply cultural transformation. For numerous Jews, this resembled the world's conclusion. Their sacred agreement with God appeared violated. Their holy calendar faced replacement. Their age-old commandments faced abandonment. Time itself seemed to be escaping from sacred oversight. The catastrophe started many decades prior, when Alexander the Great's domain split into rival kingdoms. The Seleucid ruling family obtained authority over territories inhabited by Jews, introducing along with them Greek civilization, intellectual thought, and religious practices. Initially, numerous Jews embraced these new influences. Greek education presented fresh methods of reasoning. Greek trade delivered wealth. Greek traditions appeared refined and contemporary. Yet wealth arrived with a cost. Customary limits started to dissolve. Marriage between groups multiplied. Holy celebrations faced neglect. Younger individuals questioned established powers. The temple's power diminished as worldly Greek organizations obtained strength. What had started as cultural enhancement was transforming into cultural substitution. The catastrophe intensified under Antiochus Epiphanes, a Seleucid monarch who insisted on religious uniformity across his domain. He prohibited Jewish customs, violated the sanctity of the temple, and compelled Jews to engage in Greek religious rituals. Traditional Jewish practice wasn't simply discouraged anymore, it transformed into something unlawful. These forces generated profound separations inside Jewish civilization. Certain leaders recommended adaptation. They contended that Jews could preserve their fundamental convictions while modifying their outward customs. Different perspectives insisted on opposition. They maintained that making compromises with Greek civilization signified deserting the sacred agreement with God. Past political subjugation existed a more profound catastrophe, a catastrophe of significance. The customary Jewish comprehension of history highlighted sacred safeguarding for those who remained faithful. God had liberated the Israelites from Egyptian bondage, granted them the territory of promise, and formed them as a selected population. And yet presently they discovered themselves subjugated once more, their conviction under assault, their destiny filled with doubt. This catastrophe required fresh methods of comprehending time and divine guidance. Customary solutions appeared insufficient. If God governed history, what explained the wicked flourishing while the faithful experienced pain? If the sacred agreement was perpetual, what explained it appearing so delicate? If Israel was selected, what explained their selection resembling a burden more than a benefit? Jubilees arose from this vessel of uncertainty and hopelessness. This book presented a fundamentally distinct method of interpreting present occurrences. Current hardships weren't indicators of sacred desertion. They represented essential phases within a foreordained design. Foreign subjugation wasn't proof of God's frailty. It formed part of heaven's approach for final triumph. Those who wrote the book had unmistakably observed the temple's violation. They had witnessed customary customs deserted. They had observed young individuals departing from traditional belief. Yet rather than losing hope, they understood these developments as verification of age-old predictions. The conclusion was approaching not as loss, but as introduction to renewal. This viewpoint demanded refined theological creativity. Those authoring had to clarify why a benevolent God would permit such widespread pain among those faithful. They had to harmonize sacred fairness with obvious unfairness. They had to offer expectation without refusing the actuality of current anguish. Jubilees resolved these difficulties through its distinct comprehension of time. History wasn't haphazard. It obeyed exact designs formed prior to creation. Present catastrophes weren't chance occurrences, they were appointments on heaven's calendar. Pain wasn't without meaning. It fulfilled particular functions within the broader design of renewal. The calendar theology of this book demonstrated particular relevance to modern arguments. Varying Jewish factions employed varying calendars, resulting in disagreements about the proper time to celebrate festivals and conduct temple ceremonies. Greeks brought their personal calendars and celebrations. Time itself had transformed into disputed ground. Jubilees answered by asserting that only one genuine calendar existed, the solar calendar consisting of 364 days that heaven itself observed. Every other calendar represented corruptions brought by fallen celestial beings and embraced by misled humans. Accurate timekeeping wasn't merely functional, it was sacred. Maintaining the calendar correctly signified synchronizing with heaven's personal cadence. This calendar dispute mirrors the book's wider approach for confronting cultural catastrophe. Rather than participating in modern arguments on those arguments' personal terms, Jubilees transferred those arguments to universal territory. The inquiry wasn't about whether Greek civilization benefited or harmed Jews. It concerned whether humans would obey heaven's designs or hell's illusions. This type of restructuring converted the character of opposition. Faithful Jews weren't merely protecting custom against novelty. They were engaging in universal conflict between structure and disorder. Their devotion to age-old customs wasn't backward-focused sentimentality. It represented prophetic readiness for the approaching realm. The vision of this book attracted groups that felt inundated by transformation's speed. These weren't automatically the most disadvantaged Jews. Numerous seem to have possessed education, prosperity, and power. Yet they experienced a feeling that something fundamental was vanishing in the acceleration toward modernization. Discovered at Qumran, Jubilees, and the Dead Sea Scrolls. The narrative experiences a significant shift in 1947 when a youthful Bedouin shepherd hurls a stone inside a cavern close to the Dead Sea. The noise he perceives alters everything. Not the empty reverberation of vacant area, but the piercing sound of pottery shattering. Within those vessels, enclosed in age-old fabric, rest manuscripts that have awaited nearly 2,000 years to share their mysteries. Within those scrolls, researchers of antiquity find something extraordinary. Several copies of the Book of Jubilees. Not merely pieces, but considerable segments of the manuscript. Even more remarkable, they discover these copies positioned next to additional holy compositions, biblical texts, psalms, prayers, and regulations for the community. Those who safeguarded these documents viewed Jubilees as significant enough to transcribe, preserve, and shield. The group residing at Qumran seems to have constituted a collection of religious separatists, potentially linked to the Essenes referenced in historical sources. They had removed themselves from mainstream Jewish civilization, forming a desert community devoted to rigorous religious practice. They perceived themselves as the genuine surviving portion of Israel, devoted to God's sacred agreement, while the remainder of the population had strayed. For these inhabitants of the desert, Jubilees wasn't merely another compelling text. It served as a mechanism for comprehending their personal character and function. The book's focus on ceremonial cleanliness synchronized with their intense focus on purification commandments. Its disapproval of religious compromise aligned with their choice to distance themselves from tainted temple reverence. Its guarantee of approaching judgment confirmed their belief that mainstream Judaism had abandoned its path. The collection of books at Qumran discloses their theological focal points. Next to biblical manuscripts, they safeguarded compositions that highlight sacred foreknowledge, foreordained history, and the approaching metamorphosis of the world. Jubilees matched flawlessly within this assembly. Its elaborate chronology offered a guide for comprehending how their current instant linked to historical occurrences and future aspirations. Past simple agreement, Jubilees appears to have influenced the group's genuine customs. Evidence from archaeology indicates the Qumran group observed a solar calendar remarkably comparable to the calendar advanced in Jubilees. Their celebration dates, ceremonial timetables, and community structure all mirror the book's calendar theology. They weren't merely studying heaven's timekeeping, they were attempting to exist in accordance with its patterns. The texts about community regulations discovered at Qumran mirror numerous themes from Jubilees. Both highlight the significance of accurate calendar practice. Both disapprove of association with those ceremonially impure. Both picture an approaching period when those wicked face punishment and those righteous receive validation. Both present themselves as maintaining genuine customs, while others have faced deception. This alignment indicates that Jubilees wasn't formed in seclusion. It developed from a wider movement inside Second Temple Judaism that highlighted cleanliness, distance, and apocalyptic anticipation. The Qumran group symbolizes one manifestation of this movement, yet comparable factions probably existed across the Jewish realm. The desert position of Qumran mirrors the theological location advanced in Jubilees. This book continually highlights that genuine disclosure arrives distant from the moral decay of urban centers and masses. Moses obtains the commandments on a mountain. Abraham meets God in the barren lands. Noah discovers deliverance through distance from the corrupted world. The Qumran group embodied this concept by forming their community in the desert distant from the tainted temple and polluted urban areas. Their transcription customs disclose the attention with which they conveyed Jubilees. The manuscript pieces display proof of several generations of transcribers laboring to safeguard the manuscript. They amended mistakes, uniformed spellings, and preserved reliable structure. This wasn't casual safeguarding. It represented committed guardianship of what they regarded as holy writing. The group's understanding of Jubilees surfaces in their additional compositions. They reference its chronological arrangements when examining biblical occurrences. They cite its calendar when forming their personal celebration dates. They mirror its vocabulary when characterizing their adversaries and their aspirations. The book had transformed into a component of their theological essence, and yet the Qumran group ultimately vanished. Their community deserted at some point during the first century of the Common Period. Whether obliterated by Roman forces, dissolved because of internal disagreements, or merely disappeared as participants perished or left, the group that valued Jubilees could no longer maintain itself. Yet, they had accomplished an essential function. They had safeguarded the book for subsequent generations to find and examine. The Dead Sea Scrolls disclose something significant about how Jubilees operated in age-old groups. This wasn't theoretical theology for solitary readers. It constituted group writing that influenced collective character, controlled shared conduct, and offered a mutual structure for comprehending reality. The book achieved success not merely as intellectual accomplishment, but as functional direction for groups attempting to exist faithfully during turbulent periods. When researchers of antiquity initially analyzed the Jubilees pieces from Qumran, they understood they were observing the book as its initial groups had experienced it. Prior scholars had solely encountered later renditions and modifications. Presently they could examine the Hebrew source, witness how it was transcribed and safeguarded, and comprehend how it belonged within the wider literary civilization of Second Temple Judaism. The Qumran, finding converted contemporary comprehension of Jubilees from an unclear age-old oddity into a portal into the religious inventiveness of early Judaism. The influence of the book hadn't concluded with its removal from the biblical collection. It had persisted in influencing groups and persons who discovered, within its content, the mechanisms for comprehending their position in God's universal design. Moses, the celestial beings, and the archive of heaven. Shut your eyes and picture the scenario that Jubilees illustrates for us. Moses stands by himself on Mount Sinai's summit. The stone tablets previously obtained and shattered, now substituted with fresh ones. Yet something additional is occurring, something Scripture never referenced. A being of absolute radiance comes near through the sparse mountain atmosphere. This represents the angel of the presence, guardian of heaven's most profound mysteries. The angel brings with him the most valuable possession in reality, the tablets of heaven, where the entirety of history stands documented. History's past, present, and future coexist at once on these celestial documents. Every breath ever inhaled, every decision ever executed, every instant yet to arrive, all inscribed in heaven's lasting record before the world's formation. This scenario forms the fundamental assertion of Jubilees. Nothing you're preparing to study originates from human creativity. Every statement was spoken by sacred courier to humanity's most significant prophet. This book offers itself not as inventive understanding, but as disclosed reality, not as human contemplation, but as celestial revelation. These types of assertions fulfilled essential functions in the ancient realm. Fresh concepts demanded established power. Transformative ideas required customary legitimacy. Groups confronting catastrophe required confidence that their comprehension of occurrences synchronized with sacred viewpoint. Through positioning its disclosures in Moses' voice and heaven's collection, Jubilees converted debatable theology into indisputable disclosure. The role of the angel extends past simple courier. He functions as heaven's record keeper, the guardian of universal archives. Within his protection reside the tablets where sacred commands stand documented, where human fates stand inscribed, where the timetable of periods stands safeguarded. This being connects the distance between heaven's flawless awareness and earth's bewildered reality. Readers of antiquity would have identified this theme. Celestial records surface across Jewish and Christian apocalyptic writing. The book containing life documents the identities of those righteous. Daniel references records being revealed for sacred assessment. Revelation characterizes scrolls closed with 7 closures. Jubilees engages in this wider custom while cultivating its personal distinct focus on chronological exactness. The tablets of heaven fulfill several theological operations. They form that history obeys sacred design instead of haphazard opportunity. They guarantee readers that current pain fulfills final functions. They guarantee that sacred fairness functions in accordance with flawless timetable, even when human reality indicates differently. They convert time itself from impartial medium into holy disclosure. Moses operates as beyond inactive receiver of this disclosure. The manuscript offers him as dynamically participating with the celestial courier, posing inquiries, pursuing explanation, and guaranteeing precise conveyance to subsequent generations. This depiction raises Moses' position from commandment provider to universal translator, from national guide to universal seer. The mountain environment strengthens the disclosure's genuineness. Across Scripture, mountains function as positions where heaven and earth connect. Moses obtains the 10 Commandments on Sinai. Elijah meets God on Horeb. Jesus experiences transfiguration on Tabor. Through positioning its disclosures on the identical mountain where Moses obtained the Torah, Jubilees asserts equivalent power with Scripture itself. The 40-day period generates supplementary connections with biblical disclosure. Moses remained 40 days on the mountain, obtaining the commandments. Elijah journeyed 40 days to arrive at Horeb. Jesus abstained from food 40 days in the barren lands. This design indicates that genuine disclosure demands prolonged distance from typical human reality. Past forming power, the celestial collection idea confronts particular theological difficulties that disturbed Second Temple groups. If God possesses complete awareness, what explains evil appearing to flourish? If sacred fairness is guaranteed, what explains it appearing postponed? The tablets of heaven offer solutions. All things develop in accordance with foreordained timetable documented beforehand in heaven's flawless archives. The disclosure approach of the angel mirrors age-old transcription customs. Expert transcribers labored through speaking aloud, one individual vocalizing while another inscribed. Through offering the book as celestial speaking aloud to Moses, Jubilees asserts that its human creators operated as sacred transcribers, precisely documenting celestial transmission instead of generating human contemplation. This transcription representation carried functional consequences for how groups comprehended their connection to the manuscript. Studying Jubilees wasn't simply analyzing human concepts about sacred subjects. It represented obtaining heaven's personal viewpoint on earthly occurrences. Instructing from Jubilees wasn't communicating personal understandings, it represented conveying disclosed reality. The tablets of heaven additionally operate as a form of universal constitution, forming the essential commandments that control historical progress. Just as human civilizations function in accordance with legal regulations, the universe functions in accordance with sacred commands documented in heaven's collection. Comprehending these commands allows readers to understand present occurrences and foresee subsequent progressions. And yet the book preserves an essential separation between sacred foreknowledge and human autonomy. The tablets document what will occur, yet human selections stay genuine and significant. Individuals can synchronize themselves with heaven's design or oppose it, yet they cannot modify its final direction. This equilibrium safeguards both sacred authority and human accountability. The position of the angel as discloser generates a sequence of power from heaven to earth. God forms the commands. The angel of the presence documents them on celestial tablets. Moses obtains the disclosure on the mountain. Human instructors convey it to groups. Faithful persons synchronize their existences with its direction. This sequence guarantees that heaven's viewpoint arrives at earthly reality. Time as holy instrument, the calendar dispute. Envision two factions of faithful Jews positioned in the identical urban center on the identical day and yet observing entirely distinct celebrations. One faction celebrates Passover in accordance with their age-old customs. The different faction maintains that Passover won't occur for multiple additional days. Both assert to obey God's directives. Both charge the different one of substantial mistake. The calendar has transformed into a conflict zone. This wasn't simply timetable bewilderment, it represented theological conflict. During the Second Temple era, rival Jewish factions observed distinct calendar arrangements, generating disagreements about the proper time to celebrate holy days, the proper time to present offerings, and the proper time to observe celebrations. Time itself had transformed into disputed ground. Jubilees participated in this dispute with complete certainty. This book states that heaven obeys a solar calendar consisting of precisely 364 days, 52 weeks consisting of 7 days apiece. This flawless mathematical balance mirrors sacred structure. Every date occurs on the identical day of the week every year. Spring celebrations invariably start on Wednesday. Autumn observances invariably begin on Tuesday. Heaven's timetable never fluctuates. This book follows this calendar arrangement back to creation itself. When God separated radiance from shadow, forming day and night, the sacred purpose was to generate a flawlessly structured arrangement of 364 days. The sun, moon, and celestial bodies were positioned in the atmosphere, not merely to offer radiance, but to indicate this holy calendar. Any departure from this arrangement symbolizes moral decay of God's initial blueprint. Jubilees holds back its most severe disapproval for individuals who obey lunar calendars. This book asserts that fallen celestial beings, the observers who tainted humanity prior to the Great Flood, present lunar measurements to mislead individuals about accurate timing. Observing the moon's stages instead of the sun's path signifies synchronizing with demonic illusion instead of sacred reality. This calendar theology fulfilled functional functions for the book's initial groups. Factions that experienced exclusion by mainstream Jewish authority could assert that their rivals weren't merely incorrect about governance or understanding, they were incorrect about time itself. Every overlooked celebration, every inaccurately dated holy day, every timetable disagreement transformed into proof of their competitors' essential sacred mistake. The solar calendar additionally offered mental reassurance for groups confronting oppression. When foreign authorities interfered with customary celebration practices, faithful Jews observing the Jubilees calendar could preserve that genuine reverence persisted in accordance with heaven's timetable, irrespective of earthly disruption. Outside subjugation couldn't taint time itself. Past functional advantages, the calendar dispute mirrors more profound theological separations inside Second Temple Judaism. Customary temple authority observed calendars that demanded intricate measurements and periodic modifications. These arrangements required skill, generating reliances on intellectual powers. The Jubilees calendar, with its flawless mathematical balance, could be comprehended and observed by anyone able to perform fundamental counting. This equalization of timekeeping carried transformative consequences. Groups observing the Jubilees calendar didn't require expert priests to establish celebration dates. They didn't require intricate celestial measurements or intellectual understanding. Heaven's timetable was obtainable to anyone prepared to enumerate days and weeks in accordance with sacred mathematics. This book offers calendar practice as an assessment of sacred devotion. Individuals who obey heaven's genuine calendar exhibit their devotion to sacred structure. Individuals who embrace tainted arrangements disclose their faithfulness to the powers of disorder and illusion. Timekeeping transforms into a type of religious declaration, a visible statement of theological dedication. Jubilees links accurate calendar practice to wider themes of cleanliness and distance. Just as faithful groups must distance themselves from ceremonially impure consumables, customs, and individuals, they must additionally distance themselves from temporally impure calendar arrangements. Association with individuals who obey false calendars pollutes those faithful, just as association with additional types of impurity accomplishes. The chronological exactness of this book fulfills defensive functions through offering precise dates for biblical occurrences. Jubilees exhibits that its calendar arrangement can structure the entirety of history logically. Adam was formed on Friday, the first day of Nisan. Noah participated in the vessel on Sunday, the 17th day of the second month. Abraham received his summons on the first day of the third month. These exact dates demonstrate the calendar's sacred source and universal scope. Calendar theology additionally confronts eschatological worries. Jubilees instructs that the final times will occur in accordance with exact timetable assessed by heaven's flawless calendar. Individuals who obey tainted timekeeping arrangements will overlook the indicators of the nearing conclusion. Solely individuals synchronized with heaven's calendar will identify when concluding occurrences start to develop. The focus of this book on calendar cleanliness mirrors wider concerns about cultural integration. As Jewish groups met Greek, Persian, and Roman calendar arrangements, certain started embracing foreign customs for functional reasons. Jubilees cautions that these types of adaptations aren't impartial. They symbolize essential violations of sacred agreement devotion. And yet, the calendar dispute discloses something deep about human character. Individuals require mutual cadences to preserve group character. When factions cannot reach agreement on fundamental timetabling, more profound connections transform into challenging to maintain. The calendar wasn't merely about time. It concerned acceptance, character, and reciprocal identification of holy power. The proof from archaeology at Qumran indicates that certain Jewish groups did try to exist in accordance with the Jubilees calendar arrangement. Their celebration dates, ceremonial timetables, and group customs mirror the book's solar measurements. These factions selected theological cleanliness over functional ease, group wholeness over wider recognition. Periods of Jubilee, how history was fragmented into segments. Picture history as an enormous collection where texts are structured not by topic but by time intervals of precisely 49 years apiece. Every section holds 7 shelves, and every shelf contains 7 years of human reality. This represents how Jubilees pictures the progression of time, not as a perpetual current, but as deliberately assessed segments, each fulfilling particular functions in God's perpetual design. The Jubilee arrangement converts time from impartial medium into significant framework. Every 49th year indicates a significant transition moment in human progress. These aren't haphazard milestones, but sacredly formed checkpoints where heaven assesses earthly advancement and commences fresh stages of the universal design. Those who wrote the book grasped that humans require controllable methods to understand enormous time measurements. Perpetuity overwhelms limited minds. Perpetual time generates hopelessness, yet time separated into significant portions transforms into understandable, even reassuring. Every Jubilee interval possesses its personal character, its personal functions, its personal position in the broader narrative of sacred fairness. Jubilees starts its chronological arrangement with Adam's formation, forming this as the zero moment from which all following history progresses. Every significant biblical occurrence obtains exact dating inside the Jubilee structure. Noah's great flood takes place in the 10th Jubilee. Abraham obtains his summons in the 19th Jubilee. Moses guides the departure in the 50th Jubilee. These dates aren't coincidental particulars. They disclose the mathematical exactness underlying obvious historical disorder. The 7-week framework inside every Jubilee mirrors the Sabbath concept prolonged through time. Just as the week of creation formed the cadence of labor and recovery, Jubilee intervals form cadences of historical progress. Intervals of expansion guide to intervals of reduction. Periods of benefit yield to periods of assessment, eras of moral decay ready for eras of renewal. This circular comprehension of time fulfilled healing functions for groups confronting catastrophe. Current hardships weren't unprecedented catastrophes. They represented recognizable phases and repeating designs that had occurred across history. Every generation confronted comparable difficulties, executed comparable selections, and encountered comparable results. Comprehending these designs offered both reassurance and direction. The Jubilee arrangement additionally operates as a prophetic structure. Through identifying where present occurrences belong inside the formed design, readers can foresee what arrives subsequently. If the current period resembles the moral decay that came before Noah's great flood, then assessment and renewal must be nearing. If modern oppression mirrors Abraham's ordeals, then sacred validation exists ahead. Past forecasting, the Jubilee structure offers moral framework for comprehending historical occurrences. Every interval fulfills particular functions in God's design for human progress. Periods of wealth assess whether individuals will stay faithful amid benefit. Intervals of pain refine personality and intensify reliance on sacred favor. Eras of assessment eliminate moral decay to generate room for rebirth. The mathematical exactness of the Jubilee arrangement attracts minds that discover reassurance in structure and forecastability. Where some observed haphazard brutality and purposeless pain, Jubilees identified sacred mathematics. Every catastrophe fulfilled measured functions. Every success occurred on timetable. Even disorder obeyed celestial formulas. This chronological structure additionally confronts inquiries about sacred fairness that disturbed age-old believers. If God is benevolent and mighty, what explains those wicked flourishing while those righteous experience pain? The Jubilee arrangement offers solutions. Fairness functions in accordance with exact timetables that extend across several generations. What seems postponed from human viewpoint is genuinely exactly scheduled from heaven's viewpoint. This book offers its chronological arrangement as disclosed awareness instead of human contemplation. The angel of the presence doesn't simply inform Moses what occurred in history. He discloses the temporal framework inside which all occurrences take place. This framework predates creation itself, existing in heaven's perpetual designs prior to time's formation. Jubilee intervals additionally function as portions of moral calculation. Every 49-year period gathers a particular quantity of righteousness or corruption. When moral decay arrives at foreordained boundaries, sacred participation transforms into essential. When devotion accomplishes adequate degrees, benefit naturally obeys. The arrangement offers both caution and motivation. The elaborate chronology of this book fulfills defensive functions through exhibiting that its theological arrangement can structure the entirety of biblical history logically. Every patriarch, every monarch, every seer belongs exactly inside the Jubilee structure. This all-encompassing arrangement demonstrates the system's sacred source instead of human creation. The Jubilee framework generates a feeling of historical force, advancing toward foreordained objectives. Time isn't simply elapsing, it's advancing through appointed phases toward final resolution. Every finished Jubilee draws the world nearer to its concluding metamorphosis. History possesses direction, intention, and a nearing endpoint. For groups that experience disorientation in the disorder of their current instant, this temporal structure offered essential guidance. They weren't encountering haphazard oppression, but appointed affliction. Their hardships weren't purposeless, but fulfilled particular operations in the broader design. Their perseverance contributed to the fulfillment of time's magnificent undertaking. The chronological exactness of this book additionally operates as unspoken disapproval of individuals who cannot identify the designs of sacred guidance. Accurate sacred perception allows identification of time's more profound cadences. Individuals who overlook these designs disclose their sacred sightlessness. Comprehending Jubilee time transforms into an indication of genuine insight. Retelling Genesis, yet this occasion with a timepiece, envision the recognizable narrative of formation. Yet presently, every occurrence arrives with a time marking. Adam inhales his initial breath at exactly midday on Friday, the initial day of the initial month of the initial year. Eve opens her eyes on Saturday, the 8th day. Their initial offspring arrives in the 3rd Jubilee, 4th week, initial year. Abruptly, the ageless narratives of origins transform into elements of a universal timetable. This represents how Jubilees converts Genesis from story into chronology. Every dialogue between God and humanity, every considerable selection, every result obtains exact dating inside the book's mathematical structure. Time transforms into a participant in the narrative, as significant as any human figure. The chronological exactness fulfills several functions. Initially, it exhibits that nothing in human history takes place through chance. Every instant occurs in accordance with sacred planning. Secondly, it forms designs that repeat across following generations. What occurs to Adam and Eve provides a glimpse of what will occur to their offspring. Third, it converts recognizable narratives into prophetic patterns for comprehending subsequent occurrences. Jubilees dedicates particular focus to the timing of moral selections and their results. Adam and Eve exist in Eden for precisely 7 years prior to their rebellion. Cain takes Abel's life in the 4th Jubilee, initial week, 4th year. The Great Flood starts in the 10th Jubilee, 2nd week. These exact dates indicate that sacred forbearance functions in accordance with mathematical concepts instead of random choices. The retelling of this book highlights themes predominantly missing from the Genesis narrative. Where holy writings concentrate on connections and conflict, Jubilees emphasizes commandment and calendar. Individuals dedicate considerable time acquiring proper celebration practices, comprehending ceremonial obligations, and obtaining guidance about timekeeping. The patriarchs transform into instructors of sacred commandment instead of merely forebears of the selected population. This legal focus mirrors the book's worry with modern religious arguments. Through demonstrating that Adam, Noah, and Abraham already comprehended accurate Sabbath practice, celebration calendars, and cleanliness commandments, Jubilees contends that these customs symbolize initial sacred purpose instead of subsequent human creation. The calendar arrangement and ceremonial obligations of this book aren't fresh creations. They represent renewal of creation's initial blueprint. The chronological structure additionally allows Jubilees to settle obvious contradictions inside Scripture. When Genesis offers conflicting family lineages or uncertain chronologies, Jubilees presents exact dates that structure all details logically. This book offers itself as explaining disclosure instead of amending mistake. Yet the functional outcome is to substitute biblical uncertainty with chronological assurance. Jubilees expands considerably on the positions of women in the Genesis stories, yet invariably inside its methodical dating structure. Sarah obtains her personal disclosures and predictions dated to particular years inside the Jubilee arrangement. Rebecca's marriage discussions take place in accordance with foreordained celestial timing. Rachel's offspring occur in accordance with heaven's timetable instead of human planning. This book converts apparently personal family choices into universal occurrences. When Abraham selects to offer Isaac, the date holds as much significance as the selection itself. The assessment takes place in the 40th Jubilee, offering a mathematical glimpse of humanity's final ordeal. When Jacob struggles with the celestial being, the meeting occurs on a particular day that mirrors previous sacred human meetings and anticipates subsequent ones. Personality progression obeys chronological designs instead of mental authenticity. Individuals develop, execute errors, and discover restoration in accordance with the timing formed in heaven's tablets. Their selections hold significance, yet their selections take place inside foreordained windows of chance. Autonomy functions inside sacred timetabling instead of substituting it. The dating arrangement of this book generates a feeling of historical force, constructing toward particular objectives. Every generation advances nearer to the accomplishment of guarantees offered to their forebears. Every Jubilee interval draws humanity closer to the renewal of Eden's excellence. Time transforms into a companion instead of adversary, transporting faithful individuals toward their predetermined legacy. Jubilees additionally employs chronology to confront theological difficulties that disturbed its initial readers. What explained righteous individuals like Abel experiencing pain while corrupt individuals like Cain flourished? The exact dating discloses that fairness functions in accordance with extended time measurements than individual lifetimes. Sacred validation occurs in accordance with celestial timetable instead of human anticipations. The mathematical method to narrative of this book mirrors wider cultural impacts from the Hellenistic realm. Greek thinkers highlight the mathematical concepts underlying natural occurrences. Jubilees employs comparable reasoning to historical occurrences, disclosing the numerical designs that control human progress across time. And yet, this methodical method never completely removes mystery from the biblical stories. Individuals still confront authentic selections with doubtful results. Sacred intentions stay partially concealed until their designated moments of disclosure. The chronological structure offers framework without obliterating the fundamental conflict of human sacred participation. The broadened Genesis narrative functions as basis for all things that obey in Jubilees. The designs formed in creation week, the results brought through the transgression, the patterns of moral decay and assessment commenced in early generations. All offer patterns for comprehending subsequent historical progressions. By the moment readers complete Jubilee's interpretation of Genesis, they hold instruments for understanding their personal historical instant. They comprehend how sacred fairness functions across time. They identify the designs that repeat throughout generations. They recognize their position inside the universal timetable that started with Adam's initial breath and persists toward its foreordained ending. The observers, the great flood, and patterns of transgression, profoundly, in the initial periods of the world, prior to urban centers ascending and kingdoms descending, a collection of celestial creatures executed a selection that altered all things. The observers, celestial beings designated to monitor human progress, observed the offspring of humanity and discovered them attractive. What started as monitoring transformed into longing. What began as sacred assignment transformed into universal defiance. This age-old narrative referenced momentarily in Genesis, yet broadened significantly in Jubilees, offers the mechanism to comprehending how moral decay disseminates across time. The descended celestial beings didn't merely rebel against God, they brought awareness that humanity wasn't prepared to manage. They instructed individuals to fashion instruments of war, exercise magical practices, and interpret the celestial bodies. They disclosed mysteries that existed solely in heaven. Jubilees offers this celestial defiance as the initial significant transition moment in human history. Prior to the observer's descent, individuals existed in comparative innocence, observing natural cadences formed at creation. Following their moral decay, humanity obtained hazardous awareness without insight to employ it accurately. Innovation without ethics, strength without limitation, awareness without compassion. The results develop in accordance with foreseeable designs. Every generation transforms into more tainted than the preceding. Brutality multiplies, fairness diminishes. The earth itself transforms into contaminated by human corruption. What started with celestial rebellion disseminates until it endangers to obliterate creation itself. This descending trajectory obeys mathematical advancement instead of haphazard reduction. Transgression gathers throughout generations, resembling accumulated value on an obligation that can never be settled. Every deed of corruption facilitates the subsequent deed. Every accommodation readies the path for more significant accommodation. Every generation passes on more moral decay than it obtains. And yet, sacred forbearance functions in accordance with exact boundaries. God doesn't participate instantly when moral decay starts, yet permits it to follow its path until foreordained boundaries are achieved. The Great Flood doesn't occur haphazardly. It arrives precisely when heaven's mathematics require purification. Sacred compassion offers cautions. Sacred fairness offers time limits. Noah symbolizes the concept of faithful surviving portion safeguarding. In every generation, certain individuals oppose the descending attraction of moral decay. They preserve link with sacred intentions despite encircling shadow. They safeguard genuine customs while others welcome illusion. They transform into foundations for judgment renewal afterward. The Great Flood story in Jubilees highlights themes predominantly missing from Genesis. This book offers exact dates for every phase of the deluge. Water starts descending on the 17th day of the second month. The vessel settles on the mountains in the 7th month. Noah departs the vessel precisely 1 year subsequently. These dates aren't ornamental. They form the mathematical exactness underlying sacred assessment. Past chronological particulars, Jubilees discloses the universal scope of the flood's purification labor. The deluge doesn't merely eliminate corrupt individuals. It cleanses the earth itself from celestial moral decay. Contaminated territories are cleansed thoroughly. Tainted plant life faces obliteration and rebirth. Even the environment demands purification from the exhalation of those corrupt. This book offers Noah as beyond simple survivor. He transforms into the establisher of the restored world. Following departing the vessel, he obtains all-encompassing guidance about accurate reverence, proper calendar practice, and sacred commandment. The world following the flood starts with transparent comprehension of heaven's obligations instead of the slow revelation that distinguished development prior to the flood. And yet Jubilees identifies that even Noah's rebirth holds foundations of subsequent moral decay. His offspring slowly abandon the instructions acquired through assessment. They desert accurate customs, embrace false calendars, and repeat the errors of earlier generations. The pattern of reduction starts once more, observing designs formed prior to the Great Flood. This circular comprehension of history offered reassurance for groups confronting their personal intervals of moral decay and reduction. Current corruption wasn't without precedent. It obeyed recognizable designs that had occurred repeatedly across human history. Every pattern of moral decay readied the path for sacred purification and rebirth. The narrative of this book about celestial defiance additionally confronts modern worries about foreign cultural impacts. Just as the observers brought unsuitable awareness to humanity, foreign authorities were bringing unsuitable traditions to Jewish groups. Both symbolized association between distinct domains that God planned to stay separate. Jubilees employs the observer story to clarify the continuation of wickedness despite sacred assessment. Certain of the descended celestial beings' offspring endured the Great Flood as wicked energies, persisting to taint humanity across following generations. This clarifies why humanity following the flood slowly returns to corruption levels preceding the flood despite having observed sacred assessment. The Great Flood narrative forms the concept of sacred participation at measured instants. God doesn't permit moral decay to advance perpetually, yet participates when foreordained boundaries are achieved. This design guarantees faithful readers that current pain fulfills fleeting functions instead of lasting situations. Noah's position as sacred agreement receiver provides a glimpse of comparable connections between God and subsequent figures resembling Abraham and Moses. Every significant sacred participation incorporates disclosure of commandment, formation of calendar, and guarantee of subsequent benefit. These sacred agreements don't substitute each other. They construct upon earlier bases while confronting fresh historical situations. The defiance of the observers finally fulfills sacred functions despite its wicked purposes. Their moral decay renders sacred assessment essential. Their assessment renders rebirth feasible. Their persisting impact renders human selection significant. Even universal defiance transforms into element of the broader design for creation's final renewal. Noah's predictions and the separation of the earth. As the waters of the flood withdraw and solid territory surfaces, Noah positions himself at the boundary of a fresh world. Yet, this isn't merely a narrative of endurance and new origins. In Jubilees, Noah transforms into a seer whose statements influence the fate of populations yet to arrive. His benefits and cautions reverberate across generations, forming the moral location that will control human civilization. The book offers Noah as obtaining elaborate disclosure about the subsequent path of history. Positioned on Mount Ararat, encircled by his family and the creatures they had safeguarded, Noah observes dreams that extend the centuries forward. He comprehends how his 3 offspring will produce separate branches of humanity. He anticipates the ascent and descent of kingdoms. He perceives the final endpoint toward which history advances. Noah's prophetic dream starts with territorial separation. He designates particular regions to every one of his offspring and their offspring. Shem obtains the central segment of the earth, incorporating the subsequent positions of Jerusalem and Eden. Ham receives Africa and sections of Arabia. Japheth possesses the northern domains and sea islands. These aren't haphazard designations, they mirror sacred purposes for human progress. The territorial separations possess moral significance alongside territorial importance. Shem's legacy incorporates the most holy positions on earth, forming his offspring as guardians of sacred disclosure. Ham's region exists predominantly outside the territory of promise, anticipating subsequent disagreements between his offspring and the selected population. Japheth's remote islands indicate both benefit and distance from the central conflict of salvation. Jubilees offers these territorial predictions as forming lasting boundaries that human populations breach at their danger. When population factions relocate past their designated regions or try to dominate territories designated to others, they oppose Noah's sacredly motivated separation. Territorial violation transforms into sacred violation. The narrative of this book highlights the constraining character of pledges and benefits vocalized by patriarchal figures. When Noah states benefits on Shem and Japheth while condemning Ham's offspring Canaan, these statements transform into universal commands that influence following history. Human vocalization, when synchronized with sacred intention, holds inventive strength that reaches throughout generations. Noah's cautions demonstrate as considerable as his benefits. He anticipates that his offspring will slowly abandon the instructions acquired through sacred assessment. They will desert accurate reverence, embrace false calendars, and repeat the transgressions that delivered the great flood. Every generation will confront the selection between devotion and defiance, recollection and abandonment. This book offers Noah as forming religious customs that will persist across human history. He constructs the initial altar following the flood, creates accurate offering methods, and obtains guidance about celebration practices. These aren't creations. They renew customs that existed prior to moral decay, disseminating across the earth. Past religious guidance, Noah obtains all-encompassing legal direction that transforms into basis for human fairness arrangements. The restriction against devouring blood forms respect for existence as essential concept. Death penalty for purposeful brutality generates deterrent against the form of chaos that stimulated sacred assessment. These commandments extend to the entirety of humanity, not merely Noah's close family. The territorial separations additionally fulfill prophetic functions through forming the territorial structure inside which biblical history will develop. Abraham's voyage from Mesopotamia to Canaan obeys paths formed in Noah's designation. The departure from Egypt advances through regions designated to Ham's offspring. The Babylonian removal returns individuals to Shem's initial legacy. Jubilees employs Noah's predictions to confront modern governmental worries, confronting its initial readers. When foreign kingdoms dominated Jewish regions, faithful readers could recall that these territories were designated to Shem's offspring in accordance with sacred command. Fleeting control by outsiders didn't nullify lasting designation formed through Noah's prophetic power. The focus of this book on territorial limits mirrors wider worries about cultural limits inside Second Temple Judaism. Just as populations were designated particular regions, religious groups required transparent limits to preserve their separate characters. Association between factions designated to distinct domains guided to moral decay and assessment. Noah's position as prophetic patriarch forms designs that repeat across Jubilees. Every significant figure obtains disclosure about subsequent progressions, vocalizes statements that influence approaching occurrences, and functions as connection between sacred intentions and human history. These aren't inactive receivers of benefit. They transform into dynamic players in guidance. This book offers the separation of the earth as logical answer to possible human disagreements instead of random sacred choice. Through forming transparent limits prior to population expansion, generating rivalry for region, Noah prevents conflicts that would differently emerge from uncertain ownership. Sacred insight foresees human character and offers frameworks that direct it productively. And yet, Jubilees identifies that even sacredly formed limits cannot prevent all human disagreement. Noah's predictions incorporate cautions about subsequent breaches of territorial designations, regional disagreements between related populations, and the requirement for sacred participation to renew accurate structure. Location offers structure, yet human selection establishes results. The prophetic power credited to Noah fulfills defensive functions through exhibiting that sacred disclosure didn't start with Moses or even Abraham. From the most initial generations following the flood, faithful humans obtained perception into sacred intentions and accountability for conveying that awareness to their offspring. Disclosure symbolizes consistency instead of creation. Abraham and the sacred agreement. Chronology. In vision, Abraham positioned underneath a covering of celestial bodies. In Genesis, he obtains guarantees about his offspring. Yet Jubilees converts this scenario into something considerably more exact. Here, Abraham transforms into a seer who observes the future charted out resembling a calendar. The manuscript positions this dream in Abraham's 99th year. Beyond a mere guarantee, this instant possesses the significance of sacred mechanics. Abraham observes Israel's complete chronology, extending forward. 400 years of servitude, 40 years in the barren lands, the domination of Canaan. Every occurrence occurs with its designated date. This dream fulfills an intention past narrative. Those who wrote Jubilees existed in disturbed periods. Foreign kingdoms pressed against their limits. Religious customs confronted persistent difficulties. Consequently, they required Abraham's dream to demonstrate that present pain was invariably element of the design. What seemed as disorder genuinely obeyed sacred structure. Abraham observes the temple's formation and obliteration. He observes monarchs ascend and descend. He witnesses the population's devotion fluctuate, resembling flame radiance in air current. Yet, every stage possesses its foreordained duration. History advances forward, resembling periods, every one with its accurate moment and intention. The sacred agreement transforms into beyond a guarantee between God and Abraham. It converts into a legal manuscript with particular conditions and time limits. Abraham's offspring will possess the territory, yet solely following, accomplishing their designated ordeals. The chronology cannot be accelerated or postponed. Inside this dream, moral guidance interlaces through prophetic disclosure. Abraham acquires that righteousness reaches past personal conduct. It demands synchronization with universal timing. Individuals who celebrate accurate celebrations at accurate instants engage in celestial cadences. Individuals who disregard these designs drift toward disorder. The manuscript discloses how Abraham transmits this awareness to Isaac and Jacob. Every generation obtains fragments of the chronology riddle, yet the finished image stays concealed until Moses obtains the complete disclosure. Abraham cultivates the foundations. Moses gathers the finished garden of prophetic awareness. Jubilees offers Abraham's dream as historical reality instead of religious creativity. Those who wrote desired their readers to comprehend that Israel's fate was never doubtful. Every success and obstacle obeyed a design formed prior to the world's formation. This assurance presented reassurance during intervals when the future appeared dark and uncertain. The dream, additionally, forms Israel's distinct connection with time itself. Different populations obey earthly chronologies, yet Abraham's offspring function in accordance with celestial calendars. Their celebrations synchronize with celestial observances. Their Jubilee years mirror universal cadences that control the cosmos. Abraham's prophetic capacity reaches past Israel's narrative. He observes the ascent and descent of magnificent kingdoms. Egypt will control the age-old realm, then disappear into recollection. Babylon will dominate populations, then disintegrate underneath Persian forces. Every kingdom obtains its designated period, no more and no less. The sacred agreement chronology functions as both reassurance and caution. God's guarantees to Abraham ensure Israel's endurance through every ordeal, yet endurance demands faithful devotion to sacred directives. The chronology presents protection to individuals who stay compliant. It endangers assessment for individuals who desert their sacred agreement accountabilities. Through Abraham's dream, Jubilees contends that prediction and history are identical. What seems as forecasting genuinely characterizes occurrences that already exist in celestial archives. The future develops in accordance with designs inscribed prior to creation's start. Human selections hold significance, yet they function inside foreordained limits. This viewpoint converts how readers comprehend their current situations. Governmental subjugation transforms into an appointed stage in the universal chronology. Religious oppression symbolizes an assessment with recognized duration. Success and loss both fulfill sacred functions that surpass human comprehension. Abraham surfaces from his dream with total assurance in God's design. He no longer concerns about his offspring's future because he has observed their complete narrative. This assurance permits him to confront current difficulties with steadfast conviction. The sacred agreement chronology transforms into his foundation in tempests of uncertainty and bewilderment. 70 populations, 70 timepieces. Picture the world as an enormous mechanism, every population functioning on its personal sacred timer. Jubilees offers precisely this dream. Noah's offspring disperse throughout the earth. Yet their scattering obeys a meticulous design. Every faction obtains its appointed region and designated time period. The manuscript enumerates 70 populations surfacing from Noah's family. This quantity possesses profound significance in age-old reasoning. 70 symbolizes fulfillment, sacred structure, and universal equilibrium. Every population functions resembling a mechanism in heaven's magnificent apparatus. Their actions generate the cadence of human history. These population timers start operating at the instant of scattering. Certain populations obtain extended periods, different ones briefer ones. The duration relies on their designated position in the sacred design. Populations selected for magnificent kingdoms obtain prolonged time. Individuals intended for smaller functions function on shortened timetables. Jubilees discloses that celestial beings monitor every population's chronology. These celestial creatures function as sacred supervisors, guaranteeing that earthly occurrences obey celestial designs. When a population's moment concludes, its celestial guardian withdraws. The population then confronts domination, integration, or slow reduction. Israel positions itself distinct from this arrangement. While different populations function under celestial monitoring, Israel responds immediately to the sacred existence. This particular connection provides them distinct advantages and accountabilities. They exclusively can prolong their chronology through faithful compliance. They exclusively confront instant results for sacred agreement breaches. The 70 population structure clarifies why kingdoms ascend and descend in foreseeable designs. Egypt controls the age-old realm for many centuries, then slowly loses power. Assyria dominates enormous regions, then vanishes from history. Babylon governs the recognized realm, then surrenders to Persian power. Every shift obeys the universal timetable. This arrangement reassures readers confronting governmental doubt. Their present oppressors might appear unconquerable, yet they function under sacred time boundaries. No earthly strength can prolong its governance past its designated period. Consequently, pain possesses limits. Unfairness possesses termination dates. Expectation stays logical even in most shadow situations. The population chronologies additionally function as caution arrangements. When Israel witnesses neighboring kingdoms disintegrating, they identify indicators of universal shift. Traditional structures yield to fresh configurations. These instants present chances for renewal if Israel synchronizes itself with sacred timing. Every population's timepiece operates in accordance with its moral personality. Righteous populations obtain time prolongations as compensations for beneficial conduct. Corrupt populations confront abbreviated periods as discipline for their transgressions. Fairness functions through temporal mechanics instead of instant participation. The 70 timepieces generate a complex network of origin and outcome. One population's reduction generates room for different ones' growth. Regional strength transitions obey falling patterns that extend throughout many centuries. What seems as haphazard historical transformation genuinely obeys exact measurements. Jubilees employs this structure to clarify Israel's distinct position within populations. They hold the solely renewable chronology. Different populations confront established boundaries, yet Israel can reset their timepiece through regret and sacred agreement rebirth. This advantage arrives with the weight of elevated requirements and more significant responsibility. The manuscript indicates that insightful guides examine these population designs. Individuals who comprehend universal timing can arrange their populations for achievement during transitional intervals. Individuals who disregard sacred timetables confront unexpected losses despite obvious strength. The 70 population arrangement achieves its highest point in the concluding period. All population chronologies merge toward a solitary conclusion moment. The magnificent mechanism winds down as history nears its ending. Populations that surpass their designated time confront assessment. Individuals that stayed inside sacred limits engage in the approaching renewal. This dream converts how readers perceive international governance. Earthly negotiation functions on exterior degrees, while more profound powers establish final results. Military strength holds less significance than synchronization with universal timing. Financial strength disappears before moral responsibility assessed in celestial tribunals. The population timepieces additionally clarify why certain kingdoms appear unstoppable, while different ones disintegrate rapidly. Individuals functioning inside their sacred time period enjoy supernatural safeguarding. Individuals surpassing their boundaries confront invisible opposition that undermines their obvious benefits. Comprehending these designs assists readers navigate turbulent periods with insight and forbearance. The celestial record, all things already inscribed. High beyond earthly worries, an enormous collection holds the finished archive of reality. Jubilees characterizes tablets of testimony, where every deed, reasoning, and purpose discovers lasting inscription. These celestial records function past human time, documenting occurrences prior to they develop in earthly actuality. The celestial transcribers labor with sacred exactness. Their writing instruments never settle. Their recording fluid never disappears. Every human selection surfaces on the tablets at the instant of choice. Yet the tablets additionally hold subsequent occurrences inscribed in symbols of radiance that pulse with assurance. History's past, present, and future combine into one perpetual archive. This universal collection fulfills several functions in Jubilees' perspective. Initially, it ensures sacred fairness. Every beneficial deed obtains accurate identification. Every destructive deed confronts suitable results. The records guarantee that nothing avoids sacred focus or disappears through openings of abandoned recollection. Secondly, the tablets form the assurance of prophetic guarantees. When Abraham obtains dreams of Israel's future, he perceives content from the celestial archives. When Moses acquires about approaching occurrences, he studies from portions already inscribed in celestial texts. Prediction transforms into less about forecasting and more about disclosure of existing recording. The record arrangement clarifies why certain individuals appear to recognize things prior to they occur. Seers and dreamers obtain entrance to particular portions of the celestial collection. They study tomorrow's information from today's celestial publications. Their perceptions arrive not from supernatural perception, but from advantaged entrance to sacred archives. Jubilees offers the tablets as the final source of all inscribed commandment. Moses doesn't generate directives during his mountain meeting. Rather, he transcribes regulations from content that existed prior to creation's start. Human commandment symbolizes imperfect transcription of flawless celestial legislation. The nearer earthly regulations correspond their celestial sources, the more productive they transform. The celestial records additionally clarify historical designs that appear to repeat throughout generations. Comparable circumstances generate comparable results because they obey patterns safeguarded in the celestial collection. The tablets hold standard answers to typical human selections. History reverberates because it cites the identical sacred manual. This arrangement offers reassurance for individuals struggling with existence's obvious haphazardness. Occurrences that appear disordered on earth obey designs in the celestial archives. Pain fulfills functions that transform transparent when perceived from the tablet's perpetual viewpoint. Anguish possesses significance when comprehended as element of broader stories already inscribed in heaven's texts. The record idea confronts inquiries about sacred impartiality. How can God assess individuals for deeds they haven't yet executed? Because the tablets document selections at the instant of moral choice, not at the period of bodily deed. Sacred assessment answers to internal dedication instead of outside achievement. The records follow intentions next to perceivable conduct. Jubilees indicates that righteous persons can occasionally perceive their personal entries in the celestial collection. These instants of perception offer direction for challenging choices and reassurance during demanding situations. Recognizing that one's identity surfaces in favorable portions of the records presents expectation that surpasses fleeting difficulties. The tablets additionally clarify why particular prayers obtain instant solutions, while different ones confront extended postponements. The celestial archives hold the best timing for every sacred answer. Certain requests demand instant accomplishment. Different ones must await accurate situations to progress. The records synchronize earthly requirements with universal timing. The celestial collection functions in accordance with concepts that surpass human comprehension. The transcribers inscribe with devices constructed from concentrated celestial radiance. Their writing material comprises solidified time itself. Their collection reaches through measurements that exist past earthly area, and yet their archives immediately impact every component of mortal reality. Jubilees discloses that the tablets hold amendment mechanisms for earthly mistakes. When human transcriptions of sacred commandment transform, tainted through conveyance errors, the celestial sources stay flawless. Subsequent generations can renew precise manuscripts through consulting the celestial collections through supplication, abstinence, and faithful examination. The record arrangement achieves its highest point during the concluding assessment. The tablets reveal to disclose every individual's finished archive. Nothing stays concealed or abandoned. The collections offer flawless proof for sacred choices about perpetual fates. Fairness dominates because the archives cannot deceive, cannot face modification, and cannot disregard relevant particulars. This dream converts how readers comprehend their daily selections. Every deed contributes to a perpetual archive that will ultimately confront sacred examination. Yet the tablets additionally document God's compassion next to human breakdown. Regret generates fresh entries that overshadow earlier errors. The records chronicle salvation as transparently as they document defiance. Transgression as an operating timepiece. Inside Jubilees' universal structure, transgression functions resembling water occupying a vessel. Every incorrect deed contributes to a gathering sum. When the sacred container achieves capacity, results must obey. The manuscript offers moral breakdown not as separated events, but as donations to an expanding catastrophe that requires resolution. This comprehension converts how readers perceive both personal and shared wrongdoing. Individual transgressions connect a broader current that progresses towards sacred assessment. Minor accommodations merged with significant defiances to advance creation toward transition, moments where heaven must participate. Every deception, every deed of harshness, every instant of betrayal progresses the universal timepiece toward midnight. The gathering operation obeys particular regulations in Jubilees' arrangement. Particular transgressions possess more significant significance than different ones. Breaches of sacred agreement commitments enumerate more substantially than widespread moral breakdowns. Transgressions executed by guides generate broader difficulties than identical deeds by typical individuals. The timing of wrongdoing additionally holds significance. Transgressions during holy periods accelerate the occupying operation. Jubilees offers this arrangement as a type of sacred forbearance instead of sacred fury. The gathering interval permits time for regret, amendment, and restoration to righteousness. Heaven awaits as extensively as feasible prior to answering to human breakdown. Yet forbearance possesses boundaries. When the vessel overflows, assessment transforms into unavoidable. The manuscript discloses that celestial beings monitor the gathering operation. These celestial calculators follow transgression degrees for persons, families, groups, and populations. They preserve meticulous archives of moral obligations and advantages. When equilibriums achieve essential degrees, they inform elevated powers about nearing participation moments. Varying categories of transgression generate varying impacts on the universal chronology. False worship corrodes the sacred environment, rendering supplication and reverence less productive. Brutality generates ruptures in the structure of group existence that demand sacred restoration. Intimate corruption contaminates family lines and bewilders genealogical archives that hold significance for sacred agreement legacy. The gathering arrangement clarifies why assessment occasionally appears postponed or excessive. A apparently insignificant breach might activate significant results because it symbolizes the concluding portion in an already occupied container. Conversely, obviously substantial violations might obtain mild answers because the gathering degree hasn't yet achieved essential concentration. Jubilees characterizes how righteous deeds can decelerate or reverse the gathering operation. Beneficial actions generate advantages that balance moral disadvantages. Deeds of compassion, fairness, and devotion eliminate transgression from the universal vessel. This arrangement motivates expectation even in shadow periods. Favorable selections can purchase time for wider regret and renewal. The manuscript discloses that particular positions gather transgression more rapidly than different ones. Holy locations resembling temples and altars transform contaminated rapidly when abused. Urban centers and domains, recognized for specific transgressions, cultivate sacred pollution that influences all individuals existing there. Conversely, positions devoted to righteousness offer partial safeguarding from gathering moral destruction. Generational designs execute significant positions in the gathering arrangement. Offspring pass on both the advantages and weights of their forebears' selections. Righteous parents generate sacred resources for their offspring. Corrupt parents transmit moral obligations that accumulate across time. This comprehension highlights the extended consequences of current choices. The transgression-gathering idea assists clarifying natural catastrophes and governmental upheavals in Jubilees' perspective. Earthquakes, starvations, and conflicts result from moral contamination that has achieved essential degrees. These occurrences function as pressure discharge mechanisms that prevent even more terrible results. They additionally operate as caution arrangements that motivate regret prior to concluding assessment occurs. Jubilees indicates that insightful persons acquire to interpret the indicators of gathering moral catastrophe. They witness multiplying occurrence of disagreements, expanding social disparity, and reducing respect for holy customs. These measurements disclose how near their group has advanced toward sacred participation. This type of consciousness allows proactive answers that might prevent catastrophe. The manuscript characterizes cleansing ceremonies and group transformations as approaches for diminishing gathered transgression. Accurate practice of celebrations, faithful contribution, and deeds of social fairness generates sacred purification that reduces the moral contamination degrees. Groups can genuinely purchase themselves additional time through multiplied righteousness. The gathering arrangement achieves its final manifestation in the concluding period, characterized by Jubilees. All human transgression across history contributes to a universal catastrophe that requires conclusive resolution. The vessel of human wrongdoing ultimately overflows, activating the assessment that purifies creation and forms sacred fairness. Yet even then, the manuscript indicates possibilities for compassion and renewal for individuals who synchronize themselves with righteousness prior to the concluding transition moment occurring. This structure motivates both personal accountability and shared deed. Individual selections hold significance because they contribute to broader moral formulas. Group choices possess particular significance because they influence gathering rates for complete populations. Comprehending these links inspires more attentive focus to moral selections and their extended results. Israel's narrative as a caution arrangement. The history of Israel develops resembling an instruction guide inside Jubilees. Every success and breakdown functions as guidance for subsequent generations. The manuscript restructures recognizable biblical stories to disclose designs of sacred answer to human selections. Every narrative possesses instructions about the results of devotion and defiance. Jacob's struggle becomes beyond individual conflict. It exhibits how sacred meetings convert individuals who continue through challenge. His fresh identity, Israel, forms him as originator of a population predetermined for both benefit and weight. The struggle anticipates his offspring's persistent tension between earthly worries and celestial summons. The 12 offspring of Jacob, every one contributes to the progressing design. Joseph's dreams disclose sacred designs that surpass instant situations. His siblings' envy demonstrates how family disagreements can fulfill broader functions. The complete Egyptian residence exhibits how obvious catastrophes can arrange Israel for subsequent benefits. What resembles servitude genuinely transforms into readiness for population status. Moses' arrival during subjugation demonstrates sacred timing in deliverance functions. His development in Pharaoh's residence offers him with learning and links essential for his subsequent authority position. His departure to Midian cultivates his barren land abilities fundamental for the departure voyage. every particular of his readiness fulfills the final freedom design. The departure itself transforms into a pattern for sacred participation. Afflictions exhibit heaven's strength over earthly powers. The Red Sea passage demonstrates how unfeasible situations can convert into sacred pathways. The barren land journeying discloses both the forbearance and instruction of sacred learning. Every component offers guidance for subsequent generations, confronting their personal catastrophe. Mount Sinai symbolizes the highest point of Israel's learning operation. The commandment provided there forms requirements that will establish their subsequent wealth or discipline. The golden idol event instantly assesses their dedication and discloses the results of sacred agreement breach. The design of disclosure, obeyed by assessment, transforms into a repeating theme across their history. The domination of Canaan exhibits both sacred devotion and the significance of finished compliance. Urban centers descend because heaven conflicts for Israel, yet incomplete domination generates persistent difficulties that afflict subsequent generations. The manuscript demonstrates how incomplete compliance generates incomplete achievement, while finished dedication produces finished success. The interval of administrators discloses the circular character of Israel's connection with their sacred agreement. Devotion delivers tranquility and wealth. Self-satisfaction guides to moral accommodation. Accommodation results in subjugation by adversaries. Subjugation propels them back to their sacred agreement commitments. Every pattern instructs the identical instruction about the results of sacred selections. Monarch David's governance symbolizes the elevated moment of Israel's earthly achievement. His military successes and governmental accomplishments exhibit what transforms feasible when authority synchronizes with sacred intentions. Yet his individual breakdowns additionally disclose that even magnificent guides confront moral assessments that influence their complete population. Achievement generates its personal sacred hazards. Solomon's insight and prosperity demonstrate the elevations Israel can achieve under sacred benefit. The temple's formation accomplishes age-old guarantees and forms accurate reverence. Yet his foreign marriages and acceptance of false worship exhibit how accommodation penetrates slowly. His governance's subsequent years anticipate the separation and reduction that will obey. The separated kingdom interval discloses how internal disagreements diminish Israel's capacity to accomplish their sacred agreement summons. Northern and southern kingdoms rival with each other rather than collaborating against shared adversaries. This separation renders them exposed to foreign assault and internal moral decay. The manuscript demonstrates how unity fulfills sacred intentions while separation welcomes catastrophe. The Babylonian removal symbolizes the final result of gathered sacred agreement breaches. The obliteration of Jerusalem and the temple exhibits that no position or organization possesses protection from sacred assessment. Yet the removal additionally functions as cleansing that readies faithful surviving portions for final renewal. Even assessment fulfills learning functions. The restoration from removal presents expectation for rebirth and renewal. Individuals who acquire from their forebears' errors can prevent repeating their breakdowns. The reconstructed temple and restored sacred agreement offer chances for new origins. Yet, the manuscript indicates that the identical designs of assessment will persist. Every generation must select between devotion and accommodation. Jubilees offers this complete historical arrangement as a caution arrangement for its modern readers. They confront comparable selections to individuals met by their forebears. The results of historical choices disclose the results of current alternatives. History transforms into prediction because human character and sacred answers stay reliable throughout generations. The manuscript indicates that comprehending these historical designs offers functional direction for movement through present difficulties. Governmental subjugation, religious oppression, and cultural force generate assessment circumstances comparable to individuals confronted by earlier generations. The answers that delivered achievement or breakdown in history will generate comparable outcomes in the current moment. This historical structure additionally presents expectation during challenging situations. Israel's narrative incorporates intervals of removal and renewal, assessment and compassion, breakdown and rebirth. Current difficulties belong inside broader designs that finally fulfill sacred intentions. Even obvious losses can transform into arrangements for subsequent successes when perceived from the viewpoint of Israel's finished narrative. Interpreting hidden meanings, governmental representation. Underneath Jubilees' religious story operates a concealed current of governmental commentary. The age-old creators existed under foreign governance, confronting force to desert their customs. Immediate disapproval would summon oppression. Consequently, they inserted their opposition inside narratives of age-old patriarchs and original history. Contemporary readers must interpret these masked communications to comprehend the manuscript's initial function. The narrative of Babel possesses particular importance in this encrypted transmission. On the exterior, it clarifies the source of varying languages, yet the construction additionally symbolizes kingdom aspirations that confront sacred power. The narrative cautions against authorities who trust human strength can achieve heaven. The bewilderment and dispersing that obey function as forecasts of what awaits modern kingdoms that surpass their limits. Abraham's exit from his homeland transforms into beyond individual compliance to sacred summons. It demonstrates opposition to kingdom civilization and false worship customs. His readiness to depart wealth behind exhibits the form of dedication demanded from Jews confronting force to integrate into Greek or Roman civilization. His material achievement in Canaan demonstrates that devotion delivers more significant compensations than accommodation. The disagreement between Isaac and Ishmael mirrors tensions between varying methods to sacred agreement character. Ishmael symbolizes individuals who attempt to merge Jewish conviction with foreign impacts. Isaac embodies individuals who preserve absolute devotion to traditional customs. The manuscript supports Isaac's method while recognizing Ishmael's persisting reality and incomplete benefit. Jacob's conflicts with Laban reflect the realities of Jews existing under foreign power. Laban persistently modifies the conditions of their contract, compelling Jacob to modify his approaches. Yet, sacred benefit guarantees Jacob's final wealth despite Laban's unjust conduct. The narrative motivates readers confronting comparable mistreatment through guaranteeing that righteousness finally dominates over moral decay. Esau's depiction possesses particular governmental significance in Jubilees. His marriage to foreign women and desertion of inheritance customs render him a representation of integration and accommodation. His offspring transform into identified with Rome in subsequent Jewish reasoning. The manuscript's unfavorable conduct of Esau mirrors opposition to Roman cultural impact and governmental control. The Egyptian residence offers a pattern for comprehending foreign governance. Initially, Jacob's family possesses safeguarding and wealth under Pharaoh's power, yet fresh authorities who abandon Joseph's donations start subjugating the Israelites. This design cautions about the fleeting character of governmental configurations and the significance of preserving separate character during intervals of acceptance. Moses' meeting with Pharaoh symbolizes the final demonstration for opposition to tyrannical power. The afflictions exhibit that sacred strength surpasses earthly force. Pharaoh's resistant refusal to liberate Israel corresponds the conduct of modern authorities who disregard sacred directives. The final departure demonstrates that subjugation possesses boundaries and freedom transforms into unavoidable. The barren land interval instructions about endurance under sacred direction instead of human safeguarding. Israel acquires to rely on heaven for daily offerings rather than depending on earthly partnerships. This learning readies them for autonomy and self-control in accordance with sacred commandment instead of foreign traditions. The domination stories hold masked motivation for opposition to foreign control. The Canaanite populations symbolize powers of moral decay that must be eliminated from the territory of promise. Their removal guarantees the cleanliness essential for accurate, sacred agreement practice. Modern readers, confronting comparable corrupting impacts, can obtain motivation from these age-old successes. The pattern of administrators discloses the persistent conflict between sacred agreement, devotion, and cultural accommodation. Intervals of foreign subjugation obey periods when Israel embraces neighboring traditions. Freedom arrives through guides who summon the population back to their separate character and customs. This design offers expectation for readers confronting comparable patterns of subjugation and opposition. David's ascent from shepherd to monarch presents motivation to individuals experiencing powerlessness under foreign governance. His success over Goliath exhibits that obvious frailty can overcome imposing strength when assisted by sacred favor. His military achievements demonstrate what transforms feasible when authority synchronizes with sacred agreement concepts instead of realistic accommodation. Solomon's subsequent governance functions as a caution about the hazards of governmental partnership with foreign strengths. His marriages to foreign princesses deliver false worship impacts into Israel's center. His construction undertakings demand compelled labor that subjugates his personal population. The manuscript indicates that governmental achievement accomplished through accommodation finally guides to population separation and reduction. The removal and renewal pattern offers a finished pattern for comprehending foreign control and final freedom. Betrayal guides to domination and relocation, yet regret and restored dedication to sacred agreement commitments ready the path for restoration and rebirth. The design presents expectation that present subjugation fulfills fleeting functions inside broader, sacred designs. Jubilees inserts these governmental communications inside religious stories to prevent immediate meeting with powers, while offering direction and motivation to readers, confronting cultural and governmental force. The age-old narratives transform into guidance guides for modern opposition, endurance, and final success through devotion to sacred agreement character. Holy location, charting ethics. The territory itself possesses moral significance inside Jubilees' perspective. Holy positions pulse with sacred power that influences human conduct. Unholy positions pollute individuals who remain there. The manuscript converts location into theology, rendering every mountain, depression, and waterway a participant in the universal conflict between beneficial and wicked. Eden symbolizes the initial pattern for flawless equilibrium between heaven and earth. Its 4 waterways transport existence, providing water to the complete world. The existence plant presents perpetuity to individuals who stay in accurate connection with their maker. Yet Eden's entrances shut following human rebellion, rendering it inaccessible until the concluding renewal. The garden transforms into a territorial representation of abandoned innocence and subsequent expectation. Mount Ararat functions as the initiating moment for humanity's new origin following the Great Flood. Noah's family starts repopulating the earth from this raised sanctuary. The mountain symbolizes sacred compassion that safeguards existence through assessment. Yet, it additionally indicates the formation of fresh chances for both devotion and breakdown. Every generation must select whether to recall the instructions acquired on Ararat's inclines. The construction of Babel converts level ground into a representation of human pride. The flat area offers room for enormous formation undertakings that try to achieve heaven through human attempt. Yet the flat territory cannot assist vertical aspirations that confront sacred power. The bewilderment and dispersing that obey exhibit that territorial benefits signify nothing without moral synchronization. Abraham's voyage follows a sacred location that guides from false worship towards sacred agreement connection. Every pause along his path instructs instructions about conviction and compliance. His homeland symbolizes the comfortable wealth that must be deserted for sacred summons. Haran functions as a fleeting, resting position that assesses dedication to persisted advancement. Canaan transforms into the guaranteed endpoint where devotion obtains its compensation. Mount Moriah positions itself as the final assessment territory where Abraham exhibits finished surrender to sacred directives. The mountain's height represents the elevations of conviction demanded for sacred agreement connection. Isaac's deliverance discloses sacred offering for individuals who possess nothing back. The position subsequently transforms into the location for Solomon's temple, linking Abraham's conviction with organizational reverence. Egypt converts from sanctuary to confinement as governmental situations modify. Initially, the productive delta offers shelter during starvation. Joseph's achievement exhibits sacred benefit in foreign region. Yet fresh authorities convert benefit into weight. The territory that previously embraced Jacob's family starts crushing their offspring. Location stays impartial, while moral situations establish its impacts on human prosperity. The barren land functions as instruction space and assessment territory, where Israel acquires to rely on sacred offering instead of earthly materials. The severe environment eliminates false protections and discloses genuine sources of strength. Manna surfaces every morning to instruct daily reliance. Water progresses from stones to exhibit supernatural offering. The desert's difficulties ready Israel for the accountabilities of the territory of promise. Mount Sinai symbolizes the connecting moment between heaven and earth, where sacred commandment meets human reality. The mountain's shaking and vapor disclose the impressive character of sacred existence. Moses' climb represents the human ability for sacred meeting. The tablets of commandment offer lasting link between celestial requirements and earthly conduct. Sinai transforms into location, sanctified through sacred attendance. The Jordan waterway functions as limit between barren land journeying and territory of promise community. Passing its waters represents shift from readiness to accomplishment. The miraculous separation exhibits sacred strength, functioning through natural components. The 12 stones gathered from the waterway foundation generate lasting memorial to sacred participation. Location transforms into holy ritual when contacted by sacred deed. Jerusalem surfaces as the central moment where sacred existence selects to reside within humanity. The urban center's height symbolizes its sacred importance. David's seizure of the fortress exhibits that sacred favor holds more significance than military benefit. Solomon's temple converts the position into Earth's fundamental moment with heaven. Jerusalem transforms into location devoted for perpetual functions. The temple elevation possesses particular importance as the connecting position between sacred holiness and human reverence. The construction's blueprint mirrors celestial designs disclosed to Moses and David. The most holy position symbolizes the final sanctuary where sacred existence resides. The altar offers the appointed position for offering presentations. Every component of the temple's location fulfills particular sacred operations. Removal location instructions about the results of sacred agreement breach. Babylon transforms into the position of discipline where Jerusalem survivors acquire to preserve their character without their holy positions. The foreign territory assesses their dedication to traditional customs. Waterways of Babylon transform into positions of sorrow and recollection. Territorial relocation fulfills sacred instruction. The restoration to Jerusalem symbolizes the renewal of accurate connection between population and holy area. The reconstructed temple reforms the link between heaven and earth. The renewed urban center barriers offer protection for restored, sacred agreement practice. Territorial renewal represents sacred rebirth. Holy area recovers its planned operation as the connection between sacred and human domains. Jubilees indicates that the concluding renewal will convert all location into holy area. Eden's garden will broaden to encompass the complete earth. Jerusalem's temple will transform unnecessary because sacred existence will occupy every position. Mountains and depressions will pulse with existence providing power. The bodily territory will flawlessly mirror the moral cleanliness of its residents. This territorial theology motivates readers to perceive their personal positions through moral perspectives. Holy areas demand respectful conduct and attentive preservation. Unholy positions require metamorphosis through righteous existence and faithful deed. Every position possesses possibility for either sacred height or moral pollution. Location and ethics interlace to generate the structure of human reality inside sacred intentions. Timekeeping as opposition. Jubilees and First Enoch. Two age-old manuscripts surface from comparable situations with extraordinarily corresponding dreams. Jubilees and First Enoch both emerge from Jewish groups struggling to preserve their character under foreign governance. Both creators obsess about calendars, celestial beings, and foreordained chronologies. Both offer time itself as an instrument in the conflict between sacred reality and earthly moral decay. First, Enoch starts with the patriarch's mysterious conveyance to heaven, where he observes the universal apparatus that controls earthly occurrences. Jubilees begins with Moses obtaining identical details from a celestial being on Mount Sinai. Both manuscripts assert entrance to celestial collections where subsequent occurrences are already documented in lasting record. This corresponding framework indicates they source from comparable separatist circles with mutual theological worries. The calendar dispute combines both manuscripts in resistance to mainstream Jewish custom. First, Enoch discloses that the sun, moon, and celestial bodies obey a 364-day annual pattern that synchronizes with sacred intentions. Jubilees renders the identical assertion, contending that the 354-day lunar calendar taints accurate celebration practice. Both creators offer their different arrangement as disclosed reality instead of human creation. This calendar opposition possesses profound governmental consequences. The temple powers in Jerusalem obey the customary lunar calendar for establishing celebration dates. Through advancing a varying arrangement, both manuscripts confront not merely religious customs, but the complete strength framework that dominates Jewish religious existence. Their different calendar transforms into a type of separatist character that distances genuine believers from tainted mainstream authority. Both manuscripts feature descended celestial beings who taint human civilization through disclosing prohibited awareness. In First Enoch, these observers instruct humanity metalworking, beautification, and conflict. Jubilees characterizes how these identical creatures contaminate family lines and bring brutality to the earth. The descended celestial beings symbolize foreign impacts that endanger Jewish cleanliness and customary methods of existence. The great flood stories in both manuscripts broaden considerably past the biblical narrative. First, Enoch offers elaborate characterizations of the enormous creatures who terrorize society preceding the flood. Jubilees clarifies how these supernatural creatures persist, impacting history even following the waters withdraw. Both creators employ the Great Flood narrative to caution about the results of accommodation with corrupting impacts. Noah surfaces as a central figure in both manuscripts, yet his position reaches past mere endurance of sacred assessment. In First Enoch, he obtains prophetic dreams about subsequent periods and the concluding assessment. Jubilees offers him as a calendar guardian who safeguards accurate timekeeping through the Great Flood catastrophe. Both manuscripts render Noah a representation of faithful safeguarding of sacred reality during intervals of universal upheaval. The celestial portions of First Enoch discover their complement in Jubilees' chronological exactness. Enoch acquires about the actions of celestial bodies and their impact on earthly occurrences. Jubilees offers precise dates for historical occurrences and subsequent forecasts. Both manuscripts offer time and area as linked arrangements under sacred dominance instead of haphazard natural powers. Sacred assessment themes permeate both compositions, yet with attentive focus to timing and method. First Enoch characterizes the magnificent periods where every human deed confronts assessment. Jubilees outlines the Jubilee intervals that guide up to concluding renewal. Both manuscripts reassure their readers with confidence that present subjugation possesses foreordained boundaries and fairness will finally succeed. The safeguarding of both manuscripts at Qumran exhibits their significance to separatist groups that turned away mainstream Jewish authority. The Essenes valued these compositions because they offered different sources of religious power. Instead of recognizing the understandings of Jerusalem's priesthood, separatist readers could reference celestial disclosures safeguarded in Enoch and Jubilees. Both manuscripts display comparable attitudes toward foreign cultural impact. First, Enoch cautions against the corrupting outcomes of celestial awareness that corresponds Greek intellectual thought and learning. Jubilees maintains rigorous distance from neighboring populations and their traditions. Both creators fear that accommodation guides to the abandonment of separate Jewish character and connection with the sacred. The mutual focus on foreordained history fulfills comparable mental operations in both manuscripts. First, Enoch guarantees readers that their present pain belongs inside broader designs recognized to heaven. Jubilees offers exact chronologies that boundary the duration of current difficulties. Both compositions convert concern about a doubtful future into assurance about sacred dominance over historical operations. Prophetic power functions comparably in both manuscripts through assertions of celestial entrance instead of customary progression. Enoch obtains his disclosures through mysterious climb to sacred throne spaces. Moses acquires from celestial beings who hold finished awareness of historical and subsequent occurrences. Both methods circumvent traditional religious structures through appealing immediately to supernatural sources. The moral guidance in both manuscripts highlights the universal results of personal selections. First, Enoch characterizes how individual transgressions contribute to widespread moral decay that requires sacred participation. Jubilees demonstrates how sacred agreement breaches gather toward assessment while faithful deeds assist universal equilibrium. Both compositions inspire ethical conduct through appeals to surpassing importance instead of instant results. These corresponding themes indicate that Jubilees and First Enoch surface from overlapping groups experiencing comparable worries about religious power, cultural character, and sacred fairness. Their merged impact influences separatist Judaism's separate method to scripture, prediction, and opposition to foreign control. Combined, they offer different dream of Jewish conviction that confronts mainstream accommodation with Hellenistic civilization and Roman governmental power. The prophetic chronology starts. At the center of Jubilees exists a meticulously formed chronology that separates the entirety of history into controllable portions. The creators gather the idea of Jubilee years from Leviticus and convert it into a universal timepiece that assesses the advancement from creation to concluding renewal. Every interval of 49 years transforms into a section in the foreordained narrative of sacred intention developing through time. The arrangement starts with creation itself indicated as the initial Jubilee interval. Adam and Eve's period in Eden fills the initiating portions of this universal calendar. Their removal indicates the shift to a fresh stage where humanity must acquire to exist outside paradise. Every following Jubilee delivers its personal characteristics, difficulties, and sacred answers. The Great Flood occurs exactly on timetable in accordance with this chronological structure. Noah's generation achieves a moment where moral decay requires universal participation. Yet even assessment obeys the foreordained chronology. The Great Flood doesn't symbolize sacred fury abandoning dominance. Rather, it exhibits heaven's dedication to preserving the universal timetable irrespective of human opposition. Humanity, following the flood, obtains a new origin, yet inside the identical temporal framework. The construction of Babel event takes place at its designated moment. Abraham's summons occurs in accordance with the universal calendar. Every patriarchal generation exists out their designated positions during their appointed intervals. Individual selections hold significance, yet they function inside foreordained time structures. The departure from Egypt symbolizes a significant shift moment in the prophetic chronology. Israel's servitude continues precisely as extensively as the Jubilee arrangement demands. Their freedom coincides with universal timetable instead of human governmental situations. Moses guides them out of servitude, not because Pharaoh ultimately surrenders, but because the designated moment for liberation has occurred. The domination of Canaan obeys comparable temporal reasoning. Joshua's military efforts achieve because they synchronize with sacred timing instead of superior approach or overwhelming power. The territory of promise transforms available to Israel exactly when the universal calendar reveals that window of chance. Prior efforts would have broken down. Subsequent postponements would have overlooked the instant. The interval of administrators exhibits how the Jubilee arrangement functions during periods of obvious disorder. Every pattern of desertion, subjugation, and freedom obeys the underlying temporal cadence. Foreign assaults don't symbolize haphazard governmental occurrences. They occur on timetable as amendment measures that propel Israel back towards sacred agreement devotion. Monarch David's governance coincides with a magnificent interval in the prophetic chronology. When Israel achieves its earthly highest point, his military successes and governmental accomplishments transform feasible because the universal timepiece has advanced into a beneficial stage. Yet, even David's achievement functions inside foreordained boundaries. His ruling family obtains guarantees that reach considerably past his individual lifetime. The temple's formation during Solomon's governance indicates another considerable milestone in the prophetic chronology. The construction undertaking doesn't merely accomplish David's vision or Solomon's aspiration. It symbolizes the universal calendar, achieving a moment where heaven selects to reside permanently within humanity. The temple devotion coincides with a jubilee interval devoted to sacred existence. The kingdom's separation obeys the unavoidable reasoning of the prophetic chronology. Solomon's insight and prosperity cannot prevent the appointed division of his kingdom. The division between north and south takes place exactly when the universal calendar demands governmental dissolution as readiness for subsequent renewal. Human choices activate occurrences, yet sacred timing establishes their happening. The removal to Babylon symbolizes the reduced moment in Israel's prophetic chronology. Yet even this catastrophe fulfills universal functions. The relocation doesn't result from military excellence or governmental error. It occurs because the Jubilee arrangement has achieved a stage demanding cleansing through distance from the territory of promise. The removal continues precisely 70 years because that duration belongs the universal timetable. The restoration under Cyrus exhibits how foreign authorities unknowingly fulfill the prophetic chronology. The Persian monarch trusts he functions from governmental motivations, yet his choices synchronize with foreordained renewal timetable. The Second Temple's formation coincides with a fresh Jubilee interval devoted to reconstructing sacred human connection following cleansing through removal. Across this complete chronological structure, Jubilees preserves that human creatures hold moral accountability while functioning inside foreordained temporal limits. Individuals select their answers to situations, yet they cannot dominance when those situations emerge. The prophetic chronology offers the platform where human conflict develops in accordance with sacred direction. This temporal arrangement presents both reassurance and difficulty to Jubilee's initial readers. They can gather motivation from recognizing that their present difficulties belong inside a broader design that guides toward final renewal. Yet they additionally confront the accountability of synchronizing their selections with sacred intentions during their designated interval in the universal chronology. The prophetic chronology additionally functions as a caution arrangement for identifying considerable shifts. When occurrences start corresponding the designs characterized for specific Jubilee intervals, readers can ready for the modifications that must obey. Comprehending the chronology offers functional direction for movement through historical upheavals with conviction and insight. The complete arrangement directs toward a highest point ending when the universal calendar achieves its concluding Jubilee intervals. All earlier history fulfills as readiness for the final renewal when time itself will face metamorphosis. The prophetic chronology doesn't merely assess duration. It advances creation toward its planned fate through meticulously arranged stages of progress, assessment, evaluation, and rebirth. The period of final moral decay. As the universal calendar progresses toward its ending, Jubilees characterizes an interval when moral reduction achieves unprecedented degrees. This isn't haphazard historical reduction, but an appointed stage in the sacred chronology. The manuscript offers this period as the most shadow section prior to sunrise, when moral decay transforms so finished that sacred participation transforms unavoidable. Religious guides desert their holy accountabilities during this highest point interval. Priests, who should preserve temple cleanliness, rather bring foreign customs. They embrace traditions from neighboring populations and merge them with customary reverence. The boundary between holy and unholy dissolves until accurate devotion transforms unfeasible to preserve. Temple reverence reduces as individuals assigned with its monitoring pursue individual benefit over sacred function. Holy celebrations abandon their significance as guides manipulate calendar arrangements for governmental benefit. The altar obtains presentations from undeserving hands, while those faithful discover themselves removed from engagement. Organizational religion transforms into an instrument for subjugation, instead of a pathway to sacred meeting. Social fairness disintegrates as guides emphasize prosperity gathering over group prosperity. Those poor confront multiplying mistreatment, while those prosperous consolidate their strength through moral decay. Tribunals support individuals who can purchase favorable choices. The legal arrangement that should safeguard those innocent rather transforms into an instrument employed against them. Family frameworks reduce as customary connections diminish under cultural force. Parents desert their accountability to convey traditional insight to their offspring. Young individuals turn away the direction of their seniors in support of foreign traditions that guarantee instant satisfaction. The generational sequence that safeguards sacred agreement character starts fragmenting. International connections transform progressively hostile as populations surpass their designated limits and subjugate their neighbors. Kingdoms broaden past their sacred boundaries, crushing smaller populations without consideration for fairness or compassion. Military force transforms into the solely identified power, while moral contemplations vanish from governmental measurements. Awareness itself transforms, tainted as false instructors disseminate misleading teachings that undermine customary comprehension. Insight receives substitution by intelligent contentions that resemble logical yet guide distant from reality. Learning arrangements generate graduates who surpass in functional abilities while staying ignorant of moral bases. The natural realm answers to human moral decay through multiplying instability. Periods occur at irregular moments. Harvests break down despite accurate agricultural methods. Untamed creatures transform more hostile toward human communities. The surroundings itself mirrors the moral disorder that controls human civilization. Sacred benefits that earlier maintained faithful groups start removing as moral decay disseminates. Supplications obtain no answer. Extraordinary occurrences cease happening. Prophetic expressions descend silent or vocalize solely statements of assessment. The feeling of sacred existence that previously reassured those righteous transforms, progressively uncommon and challenging to preserve. Financial arrangements disintegrate under the significance of methodical dishonesty. Exchange connections dissolve when traders persistently mislead their associates. Money abandons worth as guides degrade coins for brief benefit. Markets transform unreliable as provision sequences fragment because of disagreement and distrust. This interval of final moral decay fulfills several functions inside Jubilees' theological structure. Initially, it exhibits the unavoidable results of gathered moral breakdown over earlier generations. The catastrophe doesn't surface abruptly, but symbolizes the highest point of slow reduction that ultimately achieves essential concentration. Secondly, the period offers transparent opposition for the renewal that must obey. The shadow transforms so finished that sacred participation surfaces as brilliant radiance. The moral decay transforms so complete that sacred fairness delivers embraced comfort even to individuals who might differently oppose modification. Third, this interval functions as an assessment territory where those genuinely faithful can exhibit their dedication under maximum force. When preserving sacred agreement, devotion transforms expensive and challenging. Individuals who continue demonstrate their genuine devotion. The moral decay distances authentic believers from individuals who simply obeyed custom when it was easy. The manuscript indicates that this period of final moral decay matches to the creator's personal historical instant. Their modern readers confront precisely these forms of difficulties, from tainted religious authority, foreign cultural impact, and moral reduction. The prophetic characterization functions as both clarification for present challenges and confidence that they fulfill broader, sacred intentions. Jubilees offers this shadow interval as fleeting despite its power. The universal calendar guarantees that moral decay cannot persist perpetually. Sacred forbearance possesses boundaries, and those limits surface on heaven's chronology. When the period achieves its foreordained ending, the renewal stage must start irrespective of human opposition. The final moral decay additionally generates the situations essential for sacred participation. Heaven cannot function until earthly powers demonstrate their finished inadequacy. The catastrophe must transform severe enough that sacred deliverance surfaces as the solely feasible resolution. Incomplete moral decay might motivate transformation attempts. Complete moral decay requires substitution with a completely fresh structure. Comprehending this period assists readers preserve expectation during their personal shadow periods. Current difficulties belong inside a broader design that incorporates both assessment and renewal. The moral decay they witness and reality fulfills universal functions that surpass instant pain. Even the most shadow interval in the prophetic chronology guides toward final success of fairness and righteousness. Dreams of universal conflict. Envision age-old transcribers in dimly radiant chambers, their hands shaking as they documented dreams of concluding battle. The Book of Jubilees suggests universal conflict between powers of radiance and darkness. These weren't the elaborate combat scenarios we encounter in subsequent manuscripts. Rather, they surfaced as murmured guarantees of sacred fairness. The creators illustrated disagreement in expansive movements. Beneficial would ascend against wicked, heaven would lower to earth. Celestial beings would advance next to those faithful. And yet these dreams possessed more significance as expectation than as prediction. When kingdoms crush your population, when foreign deities violate your temples, the vision of universal deliverance transforms into a survival line. Past mere vengeance imagination, these conflict dreams fulfilled a more profound function. They recalled readers that earthly strengths possessed no concluding power. Rome might govern the Mediterranean. Greek civilization might inundate the urban centers, yet sacred fairness awaited in the background, forbearing as mountain stone. The manuscript vocalizes about princes and strengths facing overthrow. Populations that surpassed their limits would confront reckoning. Monarchs who abandoned their position would disintegrate to particles. These weren't haphazard deeds of brutality, yet universal path amendments. The cosmos itself would renew accurate structure. Beyond military domination, this universal conflict symbolized moral realignment. Reality would succeed over illusion. Fairness would overcome subjugation. Those faithful would observe their oppressors, delivered reduced. Consequently, the current pain possessed significance. Every unfairness gathered proof for the concluding ordeal. Age-old readers discovered reassurance in these dreams during their most shadow hours. When Antiochus violated the temple, when collaborators exchanged their legacy for Greek prosperity, when customary methods appeared predetermined to vanish, the guarantee of universal conflict murmured, "This additionally shall transfer." Sacred forces accumulate in the celestial realms. Fairness readies to advance. The conflict representation additionally fulfilled functional functions. Groups under force required reasons to preserve their separate character. Integration presented easier paths. Greek learning guaranteed progression. Roman citizenship delivered safeguarding, yet universal conflict stories recalled believers that their conflicts held significance on a worldwide measurement. These dreams converted everyday deeds of opposition into holy obligations. Preserving dietary customs transformed into sacred conflict. Observing the accurate calendar connected celestial cadences. Instructing offspring Hebrew safeguarded instruments for the concluding battle. Minor deeds of devotion gathered into universal importance. The manuscript suggests that this conflict has already started in celestial domains. Celestial beings and wicked energies clash overhead while humans select positions underneath. Every moral choice influences the equilibrium. Every deed of fairness reinforces the powers of radiance. Every accommodation with wickedness assists the resistance. Initially, these conflict dreams might resemble original or brutal, and yet they possess deep mental insight. When individuals confront overwhelming subjugation, they require to trust their opposition holds significance. The guarantee of universal conflict offered that conviction, personal pain linked to widespread intention. The creators comprehended that expectation demands story framework. Haphazard catastrophe crushes the energy. Yet pain that fulfills a more significant narrative transforms bearable. Universal conflict provided significance to current anguish through guaranteeing subsequent validation. Assessment on the corrupt populations. The Book of Jubilees possesses an intense guarantee inscribed in sacred flame. Populations that passed their limits would confront reckoning. This assessment wasn't random fury, yet universal commandment implementation. Every population obtained designated moment and region. Individuals who surpassed their boundaries summoned obliteration. The manuscript identifies no particular adversaries immediately. Age-old creators acquired caution under kingdom governance. Immediate disapproval delivered oppression. Consequently, they vocalized in encrypted vocabulary. The populations could signify anyone who subjugated Israel. Readers occupied present adversaries with their personal comprehension. Past simple vengeance imagination, these assessment dreams mirrored refined theology. The creators' trust sacred fairness functioned through historical designs. Kingdoms ascended when provided power. They descended when they surpassed limits. Babylon dominated when heaven allowed. Babylon disintegrated when heaven removed assistance. This theological structure assisted, clarifying, bewildering historical occurrences. What explained those wicked flourishing? Because their designated moment hadn't concluded. What explained those righteous experiencing pain? Because the universal timepiece still operated toward assessment. Current presentations misled. Final actuality obeyed varying regulations. The assessment operation starts with calculation. Celestial beings document every deed in celestial texts. Populations gather merit and obligation throughout generations. When the measurements influence past acceptance, sacred participation activates. Consequently, unfairness never proceeds unobserved, even when it seems to achieve. Beyond discipline, this assessment targeted at renewal. Corrupt populations confronted obliteration so righteous populations could flourish. Subjugating kingdoms disintegrated so fairness could establish foundation. The operation wasn't haphazard brutality, yet universal cultivation. Deceased timber eliminated room for fresh expansion. Age-old readers discovered profound reassurance in these guarantees. When foreign forces controlled their territory, when foreign traditions penetrated their civilization, when customary guides surrendered to foreign strengths, the guarantee of population assessment murmured expectation. Sacred fairness postponed wasn't sacred fairness refused. The manuscript characterizes assessment descending on particular conducts. populations that subjected God's population confronted freedom movements. Strengths that violated holy areas met mysterious disintegrations. Authorities who abandoned their mortality found abrupt frailty. Every assessment belonged the transgression with creative exactness. These dreams additionally fulfilled functional functions inside Jewish groups. They discouraged collaboration with subjugating systems. What reason fulfills strengths predetermined for obliteration? They motivated forbearance during oppression. Present pain would reverse when assessment occurred. They preserved faction character under force. The selected population's oppressors would confront sacred fury. The assessment representation gathers from age-old Near Eastern designs: sacred combatants defeating disorder creatures, universal tribunals stating verdicts, widespread monarchs distributing compensations and disciplines. These recognizable representations conveyed intricate theological concepts through obtainable comparisons. Initially, these types of assessment dreams might resemble severe or vengeful, and yet they surfaced from groups confronting existence dangers. When cultural endurance suspends in equilibrium, the guarantee of fairness transforms into fundamental expectation. Without conviction in final responsibility, subjugation transforms unbearable. The creators comprehended human mental processes. Powerless individuals required to trust their oppressors will confront results. Differently, unfairness seems to establish actuality. Assessment dreams offered universal confidence that moral structure would finally dominate. Renewal starts. Calendar, temple, sacred agreement. Envision the sunrise following a terrible tempest. The Book of Jubilees pictures renewal starting not with instrument explosions, yet with calm restorations to holy cadence. The accurate calendar would continue its age-old movement. Temple reverence would progress pure as mountain sources. Sacred agreement connections would reinforce resembling fresh chord. The creators comprehended that obliteration exclusively couldn't restore the realm. Following assessment eliminated moral decay. Something attractive must expand in its position. Renewal wouldn't occur as foreign introduction, yet as restoration of abandoned reality. Heaven would assist humans recall what they previously recognized. The calendar possessed particular importance in this rebirth. Across the manuscript, timing possesses moral significance. The 364-day solar year symbolized sacred excellence. When individuals obeyed false calendars, they descended out of movement with heaven itself. Consequently, renewal signified restoring to celestial cadence. Beyond detached theology, calendar renewal possessed functional consequences. Religious celebrations would synchronize with celestial periods. Sabbaths would mirror universal recovery. Holy time would progress synchronized with perpetual designs. Groups would rediscover equilibrium between earthly existence and sacred intention. Temple reverence would additionally restore to initial cleanliness. No additional foreign altars or unfamiliar incense. No additional tainted priests or corrupted ceremonies. The sanctuary would once more function as connecting position between heaven and earth. Sacred existence would reside within individuals who recalled how to revere. The sacred agreement would rebirth with unprecedented strength. Age-old guarantees would activate with new strength. The connection between maker and creation would reinforce. Reciprocal commitments would direct conduct. Sacred benefit would progress through passages eliminated of blockage. Past organizational renewal, the manuscript suggests a more profound rebirth. Hearts would mollify towards sacred guidance. Minds would eliminate bewilderment and illusion. Bodies would synchronize with natural cadences. Complete individuals would integration around holy center. This renewal wouldn't occur instantly. Resembling spring obeying winter, rebirth would develop slowly. Initial indicators would surface within faithful surviving portions. Their demonstration would motivate others. Gradually, the rebirth would disseminate until it encompassed all creation. The creators highlighted human engagement in this operation. Renewal wasn't inactive gift, yet collaborative attempt. Sacred strength would allow, yet human selection would activate. Individuals must select calendar over ease, temple over accommodation, sacred agreement over reassurance. Groups under force discovered expectation in these renewal dreams. Their present conflicts weren't purposeless pain, yet labor pains of approaching rebirth. Every deed of devotion contributed to the renewal. Every instant of opposition delivered the sunrise nearer. Age-old readers could picture themselves engaging in this rebirth. They would instruct their offspring accurate calendar measurements. They would preserve pure reverence despite resistance. They would maintain sacred agreement commitments, even when others abandoned. Their devotion would assist deliver the renewal. The renewal representation additionally fulfilled mental requirements. Individuals confronting cultural obliteration require to trust their customs possess perpetual worth. The guarantee that calendar, temple, and sacred agreement would restore confirmed their current conflicts to safeguard these possessions. Initially, this renewal might resemble restricted or separatist, and yet the creators pictured advantages progressing past their close group. When holy structure restored to one population, it would impact all populations. Sacred benefit would disseminate resembling waves from a stone released in motionless water. Suggestions of resurrection and existence beyond. The Book of Jubilees vocalizes quietly about existence past mortality. Unlike subsequent manuscripts with elaborate characterizations, these content murmur suggestions and darkness. The creators journeyed meticulously around mysteries excessively profound for complete investigation, and yet meticulous readers capture perceptions of expectation reaching beyond the burial place. Age-old Jewish reasoning was progressing during this interval. Customary perspectives highlighted population fate over personal endurance. Those deceased slumbered in Sheol, while those existing transported forward the sacred agreement. Yet fresh inquiries forced against traditional solutions. What about righteous persons who perished in oppression? The manuscript presents refined indications instead of explicit teaching. Righteous forebears appear to preserve certain type of reality. They participate for their offspring. They witness developing history. They engage in universal reverence. These suggestions direct toward persisting awareness past bodily mortality. Beyond philosophical contemplation, these existence beyond perceptions fulfilled pastoral requirements. Groups confronting oppression required confidence that those who sacrificed hadn't experienced without purpose. Parents burying devoted offspring pursued reassurance past population guarantees. Personal expectation demanded personal solution. The resurrection representation stays masked, yet existing. Those deceased would open their eyes when renewal arrived. Bodies would restore to residence, restoring energies. Those righteous would observe validation they never encountered in existence. Fairness would reach past the limits of mortal reality. Age-old readers would have captured these suggestions with appreciative hearts. Their cherished ones weren't abandoned perpetually. Their personal mortalities wouldn't conclude their engagement in sacred intentions. The sacred agreement connection demonstrated stronger than burial soil. Sacred devotion reached through all shifts. The manuscript connects existence beyond expectation to moral responsibility. Individuals who maintained conviction despite pain would obtain compensation. Individuals who accommodated for reassurance would confront varying fate. Personal selections possessed significance past their instant results. Consequently, current choices held significance for perpetual reasons. These suggestions additionally confronted inquiries about sacred fairness. What explained those corrupt flourishing while those righteous experienced pain? Because concluding calculation awaited past mortality, current presentations misled, final actuality would disclose genuine worth. Forbearing perseverance would demonstrate intelligent investment. The creators equilibrated expectation with modesty. They recognized mystery encircling mortality's territory. Human comprehension achieved boundaries when nearing sacred mysteries. Consequently, they presented reassurance without asserting finished awareness. Conviction could settle in incomplete disclosure. Past personal comfort, existence beyond expectation, reinforced group determination. If righteous forebears persisted their worry for offspring, current generations possessed more significant accountability. Their selections would influence not solely their personal fate, yet the satisfaction of individuals who had preceded previously. The resurrection representation additionally fulfilled theological functions. It exhibited sacred strength over all formed structure. If God could ascend those deceased, no earthly power possessed final dominance. Mortality itself would surrender to sacred directive. This reality motivated opposition to subjugating strengths. Initially, these existence beyond suggestions might resemble undercultivated compared to subsequent Christian teaching. And yet they surfaced from groups merely starting to struggle with personal eschatology. These initial perceptions would finally blossom into more complete comprehension. The creators comprehended that expectation demands tangible representation. Detached guarantees of population renewal might reassure groups, yet sorrowing persons required individual confidence. The suggestions of resurrection and existence beyond offered that reassurance while respecting the mystery of sacred intentions. The realm rendered pure. Picture creation possessing its exhalation, awaiting age-old contamination to eliminate. The Book of Jubilees pictures a realm cleansed pure of moral decay. No additional idols marking the territory. No additional false reverence climbing resembling toxic vapor. No additional violation disseminating through holy areas. This cleansing wouldn't occur through brutal elimination, yet through mild renewal. Resembling spring precipitation, cleansing winter's contamination from stones, sacred existence would purify what transgression had marked. The earth itself would exhale with comfort as accurate structure restored to its cadences. The creators comprehended that moral decay influenced beyond human civilization. Creation itself groaned under the significance of corruption. When individuals revered false deities, they interfered universal equilibrium. When they disregarded sacred commandment, they brought disorder into natural structure. Consequently, human renewal would restore the realm itself. Past eliminating unfavorable components, this cleansing would renew favorable attractiveness. Colors would radiate more brilliant when liberated from transgression's darkness. Periods would progress with flawless timing when synchronized with heaven's calendar. Creatures would abandon their apprehension when brutality left from human hearts. The manuscript suggests at Eden's characteristics restoring to typical positions. Gardens would blossom with supernatural prosperity. Produce would possess flavors that fulfilled both body and energy. Waters would operate crystal transparent, mirroring heaven's radiance. The complete earth would transform into temple area where sacred existence resided comfortably. Beyond bodily metamorphosis, this cleansing confronted sacred actualities. Reality would substitute illusion in all dialogues. Fairness would control every exchange. Compassion would progress between all connections. Affection would inspire every deed. Human civilization would reflect sacred personality. Age-old readers discovered profound reassurance in these dreams of cleanliness. Their current realm appeared contaminated past restoration. Foreign traditions polluted customary methods. False reverence violated holy areas. Accommodation infected group authority. Yet, the guarantee of cleansing murmured expectation for finished rebirth. The cleansing operation would start with prepared hearts. Sacred favor would cleanse accumulated obligation. Forgiveness would eliminate paths obstructed by historical breakdowns. Compassion would restore injuries revealed by age-old transgressions. Personal metamorphosis would wave outward to influence complete groups. These dreams additionally fulfilled functional functions. They motivated current devotion despite encircling moral decay. What reason engage in violation when cleansing was approaching? They maintained expectation during cultural catastrophe. Present contamination would surrender to sacred purification. They inspired opposition to accommodation. Cleanliness was deserving, safeguarding until renewal occurred. The creators gathered from temple representation to characterize this universal purification. Just as priests cleansed holy containers, sacred strength would cleanse the realm. Just as ceremonial cleansings eliminated ritual impurity, sacred purification would eliminate moral marks. Just as incense transported supplications to heaven, cleansed creation would present acceptable reverence. Initially, these types of cleansing dreams might resemble unrealistic or avoidance. And yet, they confronted genuine human requirements. Individuals existing in tainted surroundings demand expectation for essential transformation. Differently, wickedness seems lasting, and opposition transforms purposeless. The manuscript equilibrates sacred deed with human collaboration. Cleansing would arrive as gift, yet individuals must ready to obtain it. Hearts must reveal to purifying favor. Minds must synchronize with cleansing reality. Bodies must function as temples for residing holiness. The realm rendered pure wouldn't constitute foreign paradise imposed from outside, yet recognizable creation renewed to initial purpose. Every mountain, waterway, valley would stay identifiable and yet converted. Residence would continue residence, yet residence as it was invariably intended to constitute. The concluding Jubilee, Sabbath of history, envisioned time itself readying for recovery. The Book of Jubilees pictures history's concluding section, not as brutal highest point, yet as universal Sabbath. Following 49 periods of labor and conflict, the 50th Jubilee would deliver perpetual recovery. The cosmos would exhale and arrange into sacred cadence. This Sabbath representation gathered from profound sources of age-old insight. Just as laborers recovered on the seventh day, creation itself would participate final recovery. Just as territories rested during Sabbath years, history would suspend its perpetual pattern of disagreement and rebirth. Just as Jubilee years delivered freedom from obligation, the concluding Jubilee would liberate creation from transgression's servitude. The creators comprehended that time possessed moral significance. History wasn't haphazard arrangement of occurrences, yet intentional advancement towards sacred objective. Every Jubilee interval delivered the realm nearer to final renewal. Every generation contributed its strand to the perpetual design. Consequently, current conflicts contributed to universal intention. Beyond cessation of deed, this concluding Sabbath symbolized flawless equilibrium. Heaven and earth would synchronize their cadences. Sacred intention and human selection would synchronize entirely. Creation would accomplish the unity it had pursued since the formation. Sabbath recovery signified accomplished intention instead of vacant inaction. The manuscript suggests that this Sabbath had been designed from creation's sunrise. Sacred insight had measured the precise duration of history's labor. Every period fulfilled essential operation in the developing design. No interval was squandered or chance. All time advanced toward this foreordained recovery. Age-old readers discovered deep reassurance in Sabbath representation. Their current conflicts weren't purposeless pain, yet essential labor prior to recovery. Their generation's anguish contributed to nearing tranquility. They could persevere current challenge through foreseeing subsequent Sabbath. The concluding Jubilee would deliver widespread freedom. All obligations would obtain forgiveness. All subjects would proceed liberated. All territory would restore to initial possessors. All connections would reset to sacred purpose. The magnificent renewal would influence every component of reality. Past personal benefit, this universal Sabbath would exhibit sacred devotion. God had guaranteed recovery for those exhausted, fairness for those subjugated, restoration for those fractured. The concluding Jubilee would accomplish every age-old guarantee with value accumulated throughout periods. The Sabbath representation additionally confronted inquiries about wickedness's continuation, what explained corruption appearing so powerful because the labor week of history hadn't concluded. What explained fairness appearing postponed because Sabbath recovery awaited at the designated moment. Current presentations misled, sacred intentions advanced on universal timetable. The creators equilibrated assurance with mystery. They recognized Sabbath was approaching because God had guaranteed it. They couldn't designate precise timing because sacred insight surpassed human comprehension. Conviction could settle in the guarantee while recognizing boundaries of awareness. This concluding Sabbath wouldn't constitute vacant emptiness, yet abundance past creativity. Every beneficial thing would achieve flawless manifestation. Every attractive vision would discover finished accomplishment. Every fractured expectation would find renewal. Sabbath recovery signified fulfillment of every holy longing. The manuscript indicates that devoted individuals would engage in this universal Sabbath. They wouldn't simply witness sacred recovery, yet connect its perpetual cadence. Their personal recovery would merge into the cosmos's Sabbath. Individual tranquility would combine with universal equilibrium. Initially, Sabbath representation might resemble inactive or motionless, and yet the creators pictured energetic recovery occupied with satisfied deed. Resembling musicians discovering flawless equilibrium, creation would find its planned melody. Deed would persist, yet without the pressure and discord that indicated history's labor. The concluding Jubilee would confirm every deed of devotion throughout the periods. Parents who instructed their offspring accurately had readied for Sabbath. Groups that safeguarded reality despite oppression had shielded Sabbath worth. Persons who selected righteousness over ease had already experienced Sabbath's characteristic. What reason was it abandoned? The Book of Jubilees struck on heaven's entrance, yet discovered no room in the sacred collection. Initial Jewish guides examined its content, assessed its assertions, then calmly arranged it to the side. Christian assemblies analyzed its theology, argued its advantages, then selected varying manuscripts for their holy assembly. What rendered this passionate text unwelcome in holy collections? The calendar dispute executed an essential position in its removal. Jubilees maintained a 364-day solar year, while mainstream Judaism obeyed a lunar calendar with interval modifications. This wasn't simple intellectual disagreement, yet functional catastrophe. Groups employing varying calendars observed celebrations on varying days, generating disorder in religious existence. Beyond timing arguments, the calendar subject disclosed more profound tensions about power. Who established accurate reverence timetables? Jubilees asserted celestial disclosure, yet human guides required functional resolutions. A manuscript that couldn't coexist with formed custom presented difficulties for group unity. The rigorous position of this book on commandment and cleanliness additionally generated challenges. Jubilees required more rigorous practice than most groups could preserve. Its severe disciplines for insignificant breaches appeared extreme. Its absolute positions abandoned minimal room for the adaptability religious guides required to direct varied populations. Past functional worries, theological subjects disturbed age-old readers. The manuscript's attraction with celestial beings and celestial mysteries forced limits of acceptable disclosure. Its elaborate chronologies appeared to boundary sacred autonomy. Its forecasting structure seemed to limit human selection. These characteristics rendered religious powers apprehensive. The separatist partnerships didn't assist its sacred possibilities. Factions resembling the Essenes who existed distinct from mainstream Judaism valued Jubilees. This link indicated the manuscript as outsider writing. Groups pursuing unity naturally favored texts that constructed connections instead of barriers. The pseudepigraphic character of this book additionally presented inquiries. Age-old readers recognized Moses hadn't inscribed these specific statements. While pseudepigraphy constituted typical literary custom, sacred manuscripts demanded elevated requirements of genuineness. Groups constructing holy assemblies selected texts with more transparent authorship legitimacy. Governmental elements impacted these choices. Additionally, Jubilees held encrypted disapproval of formed strengths. Religious guides functioning under kingdom monitoring favored manuscripts that generated minimal dispute. Texts that confronted governmental configurations endangered complete groups. The apocalyptic power of this manuscript additionally generated difficulties. While expectation for sacred participation reassured experiencing groups, persistent anticipation of approaching transformation interfered typical existence. Guides required writing that motivated both devotion and functional participation with current actualities. Age-old editors additionally regarded literary characteristic when choosing sacred manuscripts. Jubilees, despite its passionate communication, lacked the creative attractiveness of Psalms or the story strength of Genesis. Its repetitive chronologies and rigid framework attracted specialized audiences, yet didn't captivate widespread readers. The removal wasn't automatically incorrect choice. Sacred assemblies demanded limits to preserve coherence. Incorporating every compelling manuscript would have generated unmanageable collections. The texts that endured fulfilled their group's requirements productively throughout many centuries. And yet the removal arrived at expense. Jubilees safeguarded significant components of age-old Jewish reasoning that vanished from mainstream custom. Its calendar arrangement, legal understandings, and theological perceptions presented different viewpoints that enriched comprehension of Second Temple interval variety. The choice creators confronted unfeasible selections. Every text removed signified abandoned insight. Every text incorporated signified multiplied intricacy. They selected stability over creation, unity over variety, functional insight over contemplative perception. These selections influenced religious customs for many centuries. Contemporary scholars can value what age-old editors sacrificed. Jubilees offers portals into realms that sacred manuscripts solely perceive. Its passionate support for calendar cleanliness, its elaborate celestial knowledge, its forecasting history, all illuminate components of age-old religion that official assemblies obscure. Yet it never vanished. Resembling foundations dispersed by mountain air currents, the Book of Jubilees discovered soil in unexpected positions. Though removed from most sacred assemblies, its concepts established foundation throughout varied groups. Ethiopian Christians welcomed it as scripture. Qumran separatists transcribed it meticulously. Initial congregation originators referenced its insight. This book turned away to perish calmly. Ethiopian Christianity offered Jubilees its most protected sanctuary. Ethiopian Orthodox custom positioned it within the biblical texts, providing it power mainstream Christianity refused. Monastery collections safeguarded finished manuscripts when transcriptions elsewhere disintegrated to particles. Ethiopian scholars examined its chronologies and referenced its legal understandings throughout many centuries. This Ethiopian safeguarding demonstrated essential for contemporary learning. When European intellectuals rediscovered Jubilees in the 19th century, Ethiopian manuscripts offered the solely finished manuscript. Without African Christian devotion, this book might have vanished completely from human recollection. The Dead Sea Scrolls disclosed another safeguarding narrative. Qumran caverns possessed several Jubilees manuscripts, more than any biblical text excluding Psalms. This prosperity indicates the separatist group valued the manuscript substantially. They transcribed it meticulously, examined it comprehensively, and established their calendar on its disclosures. Initial Christian authors additionally safeguarded Jubilees pieces through references and suggestions. Congregation originators resembling Jerome and Epiphanius cited its chronologies. Byzantine recorders obtained its historical structures. These dispersed references maintained Jubilees concepts, circulating even when finished, manuscripts expanded uncommon. Medieval Jewish scholars periodically met Jubilees through indirect passages. Certain chronological customs followed back to its measurements. Particular legal understandings mirrored its positions. Calendar arguments occasionally revived its contentions. The manuscript's impact continued underneath the exterior of official custom. The endurance approaches of this book were extraordinarily varied. It concealed in monastic collections, separatist caverns, patristic references, and folk customs. Resembling water discovering every opening in stone, its concepts penetrated through barriers that obstructed its official identification. Contemporary archaeological findings persist, disclosing Jubilees' concealed impact. Pieces surface in unexpected positions. Manuscript customs demonstrate wider circulation than scholars earlier pictured. The manuscript's underground network was more substantial than exterior proof indicated. Past simple safeguarding, certain groups dynamically cultivated Jubilees customs. Ethiopian Christianity generated commentary writing, clarifying its challenging sections. Separatist factions generated related manuscripts, broadening its themes. Folk civilizations modified its narratives for widespread consumption. The continuation of this book exhibited profound human resonance with its fundamental worries. Individuals throughout civilizations and many centuries struggled with comparable inquiries about time, fairness, and sacred intention. Jubilees presented one compelling arrangement of solutions that vocalized to repeating human requirements. Its endurance additionally mirrored the strength of inscribed safeguarding. Age-old transcribers who transcribed Jubilees manuscripts executed deeds of cultural opposition. They selected to safeguard minority viewpoints against force from controlling customs. Their labor allowed subsequent generations to meet different insight. The manuscript's underground reality enriched religious customs even when they didn't recognize its impact. Concepts from Jubilees colored theological progress, calendar measurements, and legal understandings throughout several conviction groups. Its concealed existence influenced visible customs. Contemporary rediscovery of Jubilees has disclosed how extensively religious history depended on boundary viewpoints. The sacred manuscripts that controlled intellectual focus symbolized solely one current of age-old reasoning. Different customs, safeguarded in text resembling Jubilees, present amendment perspectives for historical comprehension. The endurance narrative of this book motivates value for minority expressions in religious customs. Groups that safeguard non-canonical manuscripts executed fundamental function for human awareness. Their devotion to different viewpoints enriched shared insight throughout generations. Initially, Jubilees' removal from most collections might resemble historical verdict against its worth. And yet, its continuing endurance indicates more profound reality. Certain texts acquire perpetuity not through official identification, yet through their capacity to confront persisting human worries throughout cultural limits. Contemporary reverberations and abuses. The Book of Jubilees opened its eyes in contemporary periods, resembling a sleeper moving from extended visions. Scholars eliminated particles from Ethiopian manuscripts and found age-old insight that appeared remarkably relevant. Yet opening delivered both illumination and bewilderment. The manuscript's powerful concepts attracted substantial students and hazardous deceivers alike. 19th-century explorers of antiquity were within the initial to value Jubilees' historical significance. They identified it as portal into Second Temple Judaism, disclosing religious variety that sacred manuscripts had obscured. Intellectual assemblies vibrated with enthusiasm about this restored possession. University collections obtained manuscript transcriptions. Intellectual editions surfaced in several languages. Biblical chronologists discovered particular attraction in Jubilees' elaborate chronologies. The manuscript's exact dating of age-old occurrences offered structure for historical reconstruction. Its calendar measurements presented different viewpoints on biblical chronology. Substantial scholars employed these perceptions to more effectively comprehend age-old Jewish reasoning about time and history. And yet, the chronological exactness of this manuscript additionally attracted minimal intellectual focus. Factions obsessed with prophetic timing captured on Jubilees' mathematical structures. They positioned its age-old measurements onto contemporary occurrences, generating elaborate forecasting arrangements. This book transformed into instrument for date formation instead of historical comprehension. Contemporary apocalyptic movements discovered abundant material in Jubilees' final times dreams. Its representation of universal conflict and sacred assessment resonated with groups anticipating approaching catastrophe. Certain factions embraced its calendar arrangement, trusting accurate timing would activate prophetic accomplishment. Different ones employed its forecasts to confirm their personal anticipations of nearing disaster. The calendar dispute demonstrated particularly attractive to separatist groups. Factions dissatisfied with mainstream religious custom captured on Jubilees' solar calendar as more biblical different option. They observed celebrations in accordance with its 364-day arrangement, generating fresh separations inside religious groups. Calendar cleanliness transformed into indication of sacred excellence. Anti-establishment movements additionally discovered ammunition in Jubilees' disapproval of tainted religious authority. The manuscript's cautions about violated priesthood and false reverence confirmed their suspicions of organizational power. They employed its vocabulary to assault denominational structures and formed religious customs. Certain nationalist movements seized Jubilees' territorial assertions and population limits. The manuscript's separation of Earth within Noah's offspring offered structure for racial theories. Its guarantees of sacred assessment on Gentile populations assisted supremacist philosophies. Age-old religious manuscript transformed into contemporary governmental instrument. New Age sacred thought found varying worth in Jubilees' celestial disclosures and celestial mysteries. Its elaborate celestial knowledge attracted groups pursuing different sacred powers. Its idea of pre-inscribed fate attracted believers in universal awareness and foreordained existence paths. Age-old apocalypticism transformed into modern mysticism. Intellectual learning labored to amend these seize-ups through positioning Jubilees in accurate historical setting. Accountable historians highlighted its Second Temple sources and separatist viewpoints. They cautioned against interpreting contemporary worries into age-old manuscripts. They exhibited how this book confronted particular historical situations instead of modern subjects. And yet, the abuses disclosed something significant about human mental processes. Individuals struggling with contemporary difficulties naturally pursue age-old insight for direction. Religious manuscripts that guarantee sacred viewpoint on human difficulties will invariably attract desperate audiences. The mechanism is acquiring to separate substantial learning from hopeful understanding. The contemporary career of this manuscript additionally highlighted hazards of literalistic interpretation. When age-old comparisons transform into contemporary designs, insight transforms into foolishness. When representative vocabulary transforms into functional guidance, creative expression transforms into propaganda. Jubilees' experience from readers who couldn't separate between literary mechanism and precise characterization. Accountable participation with Jubilees demands historical perception and interpretive modesty. This book presents valuable perceptions into age-old Jewish reasoning without offering contemporary prophetic direction. Its calendar arguments illuminate Second Temple disputes without resolving modern timing inquiries. Its apocalyptic dreams mirror age-old expectations without forecasting contemporary occurrences. The endurance and contemporary rediscovery of this manuscript exhibit both human appetite for significance and human tendency toward misunderstanding. Age-old insight can enrich contemporary comprehension when neared with accurate respect and meticulous approach. Yet, it transforms hazardous when twisted to fulfill modern purposes it never planned to confront. When time constitutes an instrument, the Book of Jubilees shuts its age-old content, yet its inquiries reverberate across many centuries, resembling expressions in profound caverns. What reason do humans persist, attempting to contain time into organized packages? What reason do groups under force achieve for calendars and chronologies? What reason does recognizing the future resemble so significant when the current moment requires all our focus? The solution exists more profound than interest or religious intensity. Time transforms into instrument when individuals experience powerlessness against overwhelming situations. Age-old Jews confronted Greek forces and Roman legions. They observed foreign traditions inundate their urban centers. They witnessed customary methods disintegrate under kingdom force. In answer, they generated elaborate charts of history's endpoint, past, simple avoidance imagination. These chronological arrangements fulfilled mental operations that continue functioning presently. They converted bewildering occurrences into significant designs. They linked personal pain to universal intention. They guaranteed that current disorder obeyed sacred design. Above all, they confirmed believers that present configurations weren't lasting. Contemporary correspondences aren't challenging to discover. Financial catastrophe generates theories about approaching disintegration. Governmental upheaval produces forecasts of arrangement fragmentation. Cultural transformation activates cautions about moral reduction. Surrounding dangers generate timetables for planetary catastrophe. The impulse to transform time into instrument passes all limits of period, civilization, and conviction. And yet Jubilees presents beyond cautionary narrative about human mental processes. Its creators hold authentic insight about pain, expectation, and group endurance. They comprehended that individuals require story structures to operation catastrophe. They identified that mutual time feeling generates social connections. They grasped that subsequent expectation allows current perseverance. The calendar obsession of this book mirrored more profound reality about human connection to universal structure. Groups that abandon link to natural cadences drift toward disorder. Civilizations that desert customary timing abandon cultural coherence. Persons who cannot position themselves in significant time progression experience existence concern. Consequently, Jubilees' apparently rigid chronology genuinely confronted adaptability requirements. Through offering established structure for history's advancement, it allowed adaptive answers to modifying situations. Individuals who recognized where history was progressing could modify approaches while preserving strategic direction. The unsuccessful sacred attempt of this manuscript additionally instructs significant instructions about group choice creating. Religious powers confronted unfeasible selections between rival worth. Unity demanded limits. Stability required challenging removals. Functional requirements occasionally overruled theological selections. And yet the underground endurance of this book exhibits that removed insight doesn't merely vanish. Different viewpoints discover passages for safeguarding. Minority expressions find devoted audiences. Suppressed perceptions await rediscovery by subsequent generations. The human pursuit for reality is more continuing than any organizational controlling. Contemporary readers can value Jubilees without recognizing its precise assertions. The manuscript illuminates age-old reasoning realms that sacred writing solely perceives. It discloses mental approaches that subjugated groups cultivated for endurance. It exhibits inventive theological answers to historical catastrophe. Perhaps above all, Jubilees recalls us that time feeling is formed instead of natural. The methods we separate history, timetable deeds, and foresee futures mirror selections instead of findings. These formations possess strength to influence conduct, maintain groups, and allow opposition to subjugation. This book didn't forecast our realm's conclusion, yet it demonstrates how desperately certain individuals desired their realm to conclude. It discloses the crushing significance of kingdom subjugation, the corrosive outcomes of cultural integration, and the deep human requirement for fairness. In their time instruments, we perceive the attractive and terrible profundity of human expectation under force. Comprehending Jubilees as historical possession instead of prophetic design permits us to acquire from its insight while preventing its hazards. We can value its mental perceptions without embracing its chronological assertions. We can admire its group-constructing approaches without welcoming its separatist limits. We can respect its passion for fairness without recognizing its timing forecasts. The age-old transcribers who generated Jubilees have extensively since restored to particles. Their forecast final periods never occurred as pictured. Their calendar disputes have faced abandonment by all excluding specialists. And yet their more profound perceptions about human character, group endurance, and the connection between pain and expectation stay as relevant as ever. When time transforms into instrument in our personal hands, we would accomplish effectively to recall their demonstration. They wielded chronology in function of fairness instead of strength, expectation instead of apprehension, group instead of control. Their legacy indicates that time's genuine strength exists not in forecasting the subsequent moment, yet in creating significance of history and allowing significant deed in the current moment.